Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're back. The shows keep on coming and the guests keep on getting bigger and bigger. If it was the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. The analysts are in the house for this one. We've been waiting for Jason McGovern to fly back from Thailand to arrange our squad audit on what we're making of all things Tottenham, who we keeping, who we selling, who we loaning, and say it quietly, who we buying. Just don't tell Jason. If it's the first time, you can find us. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. A reminder for you guys out there, if you can, to like, hype, subscribe to the show. The same for Ash over at Spurs Kings. The same for George over at Georgia Killia. And again, a reminder for you guys out there, if you haven't already made aware, we'd like to be sponsored by Sailey during this period building up to the World Cup. So if you are, of course, taking any trips around the world, whether it's for the World Cup, whether it's a holiday away from Tottenham, you can get internet access upon your arrival to your favourite destinations, save the money on all the important roaming fees, safe and secure internet. I have to break trend here because I think, Jace, you had Sailey for one of your previous trips. I think it was to Thai, and it's fair to say that it was in good use. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely of use on, when was it? When I was out there Christmas time.
Yep.
So, definitely a big help, especially if you've got gambling apps and things like that on the go where you get blocked out overseas. So, yeah, definitely. And some of the streaming sites and things for sure.
Okay, well, make sure you check that out. Like I say, we've got an exclusive 15% off your first purchase by using the code LWOS. So that's sailey.com/LWOS. Listen, we'll, of course, be updating you on what is happening in and around Spurs in general, but we wanted to save this show primarily for a bit of a squad audit because we've not had a chance to do that yet, and we're conscious that the window is opening towards, of course, the start of next week, and we've got World Cup fever as well that we're going to have to battle. As many people know out there, I'm just kind of glued to Tottenham, so I don't really let the World Cup try and bog me down too much. I know some of the boys will be looking forward to it, of course, and rightly so. There's a number of Spurs players there, so we'll rightly be taking an interest, but the big news to actually start the show on, depending on how you call it big news, before we bring the gents in, is that we do understand that the Lewis family, Tottenham Hotspur's owners, are set to inject more money into the club ahead of what's being billed as a big summer to back Roberto De Zerbi. They're looking to raise 200 million apparently by selling some of their art collection, a vast art collection, but it's led to believe that they are going to back Roberto De Zerbi in, of course, this upcoming summer transfer window. When you do bear in mind, at the moment, as things stands, they've got deals over the line for Andy Robertson. There's that free transfer that's been done for Marcus Senesi that apparently is all but just waiting to be announced. Paul Van Hecke, Spurs remain in talks for him. There's led to believe a third bid has gone in. Whether or not that's to be accepted, we're going to wait to see. And apparently they are still in talks for Savinho. And we'll just have to wait and see just how far along that does progress. But we'll be coming on to that and more during this edition of Last Word on Spurs. But George, we'll open with you, mate, because you've not actually been on since Spurs preserved their Premier League status. And I actually did catch a whiff of some of the West Ham targets that are doing the rounds. And I think, God, bit of a relief we're not having to discuss some of the names that was on that list, George.
Oh, look, we said this on many shows before, didn't we? How it could be so detrimental for the club if we went down. And I know there was a big section of the fan base. Well, I say big, to be fair, it wasn't pretty big, a loud section of the fan base. Should I say that were like, oh, we need to go down to stuff it to them at the top. But to be honest with you, I think if we went down, you can see from that West Ham list alone that we would be in a horror show because look, we struggle to get transfers right as it is. And I think we're gonna go through that today, aren't we? What we think of our squad. And I think had we had gone down, this would be a lot more somber video because I think we'll be seeing a lot more departures, especially ones that you actually would want to keep. So yeah, let's just be thankful that we can actually try and build on something good, unlike those lot in East London.
Absolutely. And I think, like I say, we've got a lot to get through on the show, but I think one thing we do make clear, Jace, bringing you in, then we'll go to Ash, is the fact that I think this time last year we were here, we were still dilly-dallying on what we were doing with the manager, because just a reminder, if I take you back, after Bilbao, we had that kind of 2-week period of kind of waiting to see what the club were going to do. Ange got sacked on the 6th of June. Thomas Frank wasn't appointed until the 13th of June. So if we do assume, and it's a big assumption at the moment, that Spurs are going to pull off the 4 players that they look like they're in for, and what I mean by that, obviously, is Robertson, Senesi, then Van Hecke, and Savinho, there's an argument to say that they're massively ahead of the game in comparison to last year at this point, where we didn't even know at that time who the manager was going to be and how quickly we were going to react. And I think if you remember at the time, I think our concern was that already some of the big clubs around us were making their move. So does it feel already that we've had a bit of a head start in comparison to this time last year?
Well, to me, it looks like we've signed 2 players that we knew we were signing in January and one that we were chasing last summer. So in many ways, we're 12 months and 6 months behind where we should be, because these are players we went before we even appointed Tudor.
Very fair point.
You know, that's where we are with it. That's where we are with it. And that's one of my worries, that we're here to back De Zerbi, and yet here's players that we were linked with under Thomas Frank being signed. So, you know, how much new blood has De Zerbi sat down and said he wants? Van Hecke probably is one of them, but the other 3 were Thomas Frank signings that we're now making way after Thomas Frank has left the club.
Do you see it similar like that, Ash, to you? I mean, I know you was on the show a couple of weeks ago with us and we were debating players that Spurs are trying to get over the line. Would you agree with Jason's take there, or are you more slightly optimistic about how quickly Spurs are moving in comparison to other summers? I mean, I remember previous summers, for example, like a Luka Modric that we moved for quite early. I can't remember ever being in a position where, at the time of recording, we're the 9th of June, looks like Spurs have got 2 done in Senesi and Robertson. They're in talks, we hear, for both Savinho and Van Hecke. So they do pull all those off for potentially, apparently, maybe before the World Cup starts. Does it feel like a flying start, Ash?
I mean, after we won the Europa League, I was expecting this type of start. And I remember Manchester United, they went all guns blazing and they got their player in from early. So I was like, how come we're not moving like Man United and they lost the final? And I start to think maybe you need a bit of pain, or you need a bit of a thunderstorm to kind of wake the club up, to wake some of these owners up. And they did say in January, which they made a mistake of, they didn't want to rush or jump into any like hasty decisions. They want to use that all in the summer and go big. Now, we all know what happens as a result of that. But I think what they've done is looked at their plan, showed it to De Zerbi, and I don't think De Zerbi would have said, you know, I'm not happy with this player, but okay, you can still get this player in. I think every player that's gone through the players that they suggested for Frank, De Zerbi would have had a look at and would have seen if he could use those type of characters or use those type of players in his team. And yeah, here we are, man. That's why I think things are moving a bit quick as well. And I think because De Zerbi does have a say, as Jason's already said about Van Hecke, I think that's the reason why you're seeing a bit of movement, a bit of early movement. So look, if you look at the player like Robertson, I'm not super loud about, but in terms of Senesi, that's a player I'd really like to see in the door. I haven't seen the shirt held up yet, but he's a player for me who was really performing well last season and even the season before last. So that alongside Van Hecke, if we get those over the line, I'll be very excited.
Yeah, I agree. And we had a really good show on the Monday with Matt Law. I'd implore you if you haven't had a chance to go and check that out. A really good show where, again, it does feel like Matt said it there. They are looking to back Roberto De Zerbi. It does feel like, I say, he's going to get an injection of funds. I mean, there was that assumption, a few summers ago where I think Spurs drew down 100 million. 50 million was definitely used. I'm not sure what happened to the other 50 million at the time. Was seemed to be lost at the back of the sofa. But look, we're going to come on to that and more during the show. But guys, it is going to be, like I say, our primary squad audit. I want to say a massive thank you to our friend over at Oso Spurs in Jim, who, I don't know if anyone's seen this, he's compiled a squad snapshot, really, in terms of the different primary areas that may be up for debate. And for listeners on audio, what we're displaying is a graphic here that breaks down what many would argue is the first 11, the second 11, the third 11, and you've got the under 21s as well. I mean, we are going to be primarily focusing on the first team itself, and we'll be coming on to the 17 players that Tottenham had out on loan last season and what the future does hold for them. Now, I think what you have got to bear in mind is that you've got a senior squad of 27, and bearing in mind, I think we could be potentially coming to a point where we're over the cap. And I think just before we do start, Jace, that's been one of your biggest concerns, isn't it? For a lot of people out there that say they want 6, 7, 8 signings. Well, one of the biggest questions will be, how can you make 6, 7 or 8 signings without outgoings happening because you're going to be over the squad registration rules. And that's always a key point you always bring up about every summer transfer window.
The one slight advantage you've got in that this year is there's no Europe. So you're not stuck with 4 must be club homegrown and 4 must be this, and there's only 17 foreigner slots. The Premier League rules is a lot different to that. You know, Archie Gray, for instance, doesn't have to be registered in the Premier League yet because of his age, and yet in Europe he has to be registered. So, you know, Bergvall had to be registered in Europe last year. Again, he's just a straight under 21 that doesn't need registering in the Premier League. So you at least have got a lot more leeway this year in terms of registration than if you get into Europe. But normally most people ignore those rules completely, and that leads to us going into a European campaign where you've got senior players like we saw with Tell last year that are just sitting on the bench, can't do anything because there's no room to register them.
Yeah. Listen, I think, okay, this was going to be a fascinating conversation. We're going to try and monitor the time and put a timer on for areas to begin with. We'll start, guys, and George is already we're already on the timer here. We're going to start with the goalkeeping situation. So obviously at the moment, Spurs have got, as things stand, you'd say 3 primary keepers at the moment. Obviously there's Gunter in there as well being a 4th. You've got the situation around Vicario where there are suggestions in terms of Italy that Juventus have a growing interest in him. We've got obviously Anton Kinski, who came in and performed ever so well for Spurs in the back end of last season. It was almost a redemption arc when you think about how he recovered from the Atletico Madrid game onwards. And you've got Brandon Austin, who hasn't really had much of a look in at all whatsoever. So we'll have to see how that does work out. It's on a day we're doing this show where we have been linked with another goalkeeper as things stands, and that's the Paris Saint-Germain goalkeeper, Lucas Chevalier, who apparently is one of the goalkeepers Spurs are looking at. But let's start, guys, and we'll try and whisk through this. George, we'll start with you, or maybe we can just all give a nod to this. Are we all expecting, or are we all agreeing that Vicario to be sold?
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay, so we've got 100% with Vicario to be sold, that we all think Vicario should be leaving the club this summer. We're going to go to Anton Kinski as to whether we all feel he should be a genuine number 1. I'll be honest, I was really impressed by the way he did mentally recover from that 17-minute period in Atleti, but I have got concerns as to whether he's ready for being a number 1 generally, but I would be keeping him. Are we in agreement with that? We'll start with George.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think he showed, I mean, to be fair, after the Atletico game, I think everyone's quite surprised how it's all turned around. But no, I think he's kind of proven himself to an extent that he's definitely worthy of playing this sort of style of football, which I think is kind of key, right? It's all about a lot to do with the passing, which is one thing we know he's good at. So I think he deserves to stay for sure. But whether he's number 1, I think that's another story.
Okay, Ash, you in agreement there with George's verdict?
Yeah. Number 1, I'm like, but I need to see a bit more, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I'm happy to keep Kinski.
To be fair, we haven't seen necessarily the consistency from him. Obviously, it's like since the Zerbi came in, but that's like crunch time at the end of the season. I think remember when we first signed him, if we cast our minds back, he had a brilliant first 2 games. Like that debut against Liverpool, I thought was phenomenal. But then we saw him sort of teeter off, and even in some games this year, he wasn't commanding against Newcastle. So it's a question of, is he consistent enough to be your starting number 1? I don't think so yet, but definitely worth sticking around.
Okay. And Jason, for you, Kinski, where are you in your mind? Are we keeping him?
I'm loaning him out. I think if you go and sign a number 1 goalkeeper and you produce him as number 2, and your reasons for not knowing if he's a number 1 is because you haven't seen enough, then in a year's time you've still not seen enough. In which case you're no further down the line. So I think what he needs to do is go out and get 30, 40 games under his belt to show how capable he is, not just come in for a 4 or 5 game spell. So I'm not saying he's not good enough, but if he hasn't convinced me he's number 1, I want him to go and convince me he's number 1, not just be a backup goalkeeper for another year.
Quick one. Are we saying, is this our personal preference, or is it for like what we think the Zerbi's going to do?
Personal preference, I'd say, Ash. Our personal preference, what we see.
No, the only reason why I asked is because I know the Zerbi at Brighton used 2 keepers in Steele and Verbruggen. Yes. One was for like medium to short passing, one was for long passing. Depending on the opponent, he would swap them out. So tactically, maybe he sees a different idea, and maybe he's had a word with Kingsley. I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out there.
It's a very interesting point. That the one thing we all seem to be unanimous on the fact is that we all feel Spurs are going to probably need a new number 1. So we all are sitting here saying that we probably would keep Kinski, but Jason, you're in favour of a loan for him on the basis that Spurs are going to bring in a new number one, right?
Yeah, I mean, if De Zerbi says he's my number one, great, keep him. But if he's still going to be a number two playing the odd Carabao Cup game and the 3 other games a season, then you're no further finding that he's what you want, are you? In which case, let him go somewhere. Let him go somewhere like Ramsdale did and things like that and play games of football.
The only thing I'd say with that, though, is I think, is Austin good enough to be number two? I think we're asked, because then we're basically having to sign 2 goalkeepers.
3 goalkeepers. Exactly. Austin, I mean, if you look at Austin, he's what, 27 now? He's played 3 first-team games. He's been at the club 15 years or whatever, and none of those managers or goalkeeper coaches have even thought he's worthy of being number 2. So what's the point? And his basic use, let's be honest, George, for the last few years, is to be a homegrown player in Europe, and you're not in Europe anymore. So just, move on. Let Luca Gunter be the number 3.
So are we saying on Brandon Austin, then we'd all be in favour of a sale of him with another goalkeeper coming in? Are we saying that, George, Ash?
To be honest, I'm indifferent, because I think it's just one of those ones. A third choice goalkeeper is a third choice goalkeeper. I think ultimately you're not expecting them to get really any minutes unless, like we had last year, the catastrophe and both keepers were out. But so to be honest with you, I'm not really as bothered. I don't mind keeping him around if it just like preparing for Europe the following season. But yeah, I can't say I don't feel any sort of way, if that makes sense.
Actually, if you think about it too, Whiteman was in front of him. Whiteman hasn't even got a club. Whiteman's gone off to be an artist or something, or a musician or something, hasn't he? So, if that's the level of goalkeeper we've got as third choice, what's the point?
Ash, quickly on this one, we're doing quite well for a timer at the moment. We're going to switch through the goalkeepers. For you, Brandon Austin, what do you think?
Listen, everyone talks about this homegrown rubbish, so I don't know, maybe keep him, because that's been a thing for Spurs. So
You're right. I mean, that's always been a key thing with the goalkeepers. When you think about it in the past, with the likes of Joe Hart, that's been there, Fraser Forster, that's been there as well in terms of the club grown, the homegrown option. So maybe that might be a vital key cog in the wheel. So we'll see. I should have said this at the start of the show, guys, and please forgive me. For those that are listening and watching the show, we really would implore you, please let us know your opinion. Get in the comments and let us know from your perspective what you're thinking of the different areas we're talking about. Of course, goalkeepers, defenders, midfield, attackers. I presume that a lot of what we're going to be saying throughout this show is going to be highly disputed by our wonderful community that we've got here. So we'd love to know your comments on the rewatch, on the shows that are live. Feel free to get into the comments and let us know what you think about the positions that we're talking about, the individual players. But it feels like we've done the goalkeeping market. So as things stand, it looks like we want to sell Vicario. Jason is keen to let Kinski go get a loan. I think it appears me, George and Ash are keen for him to maybe be a number 2 with a number 1 coming in. Who that number 1 is, we're not sure. Like I said, in the last 24 hours or so, Spurs have been linked to the PSG goalkeeper, Lucas Chevalier. But again, we've seen links to the likes of James Trafford this summer as well. We've seen Henderson, of course, at Crystal Palace. So it'll be interesting to see what Spurs do in terms of the goalkeeping situation. We're going to move on to defence, and bearing in mind, defence-wise for Tottenham, we conceded 57 times in the league in the 25-26 season. And then alongside that, Alistair Gold reported this as well, that he's gone back the last 3 seasons alone, and we've conceded 183 goals in our defence, which is a really, really shocking statistic. 183 goals in the last 3 seasons, which, many have suggested at the times that when you've had Romero and Van der Ven there, that was looking like a really formidable partnership. But the amount of goals we've conceded has been absolutely crazy. I'm going to start, guys, with which I think could be one of the more controversial topics of debate, which we might all have a different opinion on. I'm going to start with Luka Vuskovic, because obviously the fact that Spurs are in talks with Paul Van Hecke, and that looks like that deal is potentially going to go through, that casts even more further doubt in terms of how far down the pecking order Vuskovic would be. So I'm diving in, guys, forgive me, with a lone player already, not a first-team player of last season. We'll start the debate with Jason. Jason, Luka Vuskovic, what do you want to see? Senesi coming through the door as well. He'll go down the pecking order. Where do you see Vuskovic's future?
I'd sooner keep him at Tottenham and he'd be our 4th centre-back this season. I can't believe the boy wants to go and play with his brother. We've gone past family games time, in which case go and buy his brother then and play him in the Carling Cup at Rotherham with his brother. But, you know, it's a case of you're loaning him out. We signed him, 4 years ago?
Yep.
You know, what's the affinity to Tottenham? What are you building with him to forever want to play for Tottenham? And if you want to loan him out, then you might as well say, right, take the 60 million or whatever and move on from him. Because, to me, it just feels like a waste of a time. Get him in around the Premier League. You want to see if he's good enough in the Premier League, then get him in the Premier League.
Okay.
You know, and his profile now is probably what Van der Ven's profile was when we signed him 2 years ago. We didn't sign Van der Ven and immediately loan him out and say, go and play 2 years abroad. So, you know, to me, if you've got Van Hecke, Van der Ven, Senesi, he's my fourth choice. And I'd ship Danso out in that case.
Okay, we'll come on to him in just a second. Ash, Vuskovic for you, what we doing? We keeping him? We loaning him? We selling him?
You know what? I'm really stuck on this one. I don't know. I'll be honest with you, because I hear what Jason's saying in terms of if he's meant to be our player, he needs to act like it, you know. He needs to be a part of the furniture. He needs to get into the culture. He needs to know his teammates. When he was around in pre-season, he didn't think he was quite ready. So he had that loan. It was successful. Loads of players and loads of clubs are looking at him saying, you know, he's hot property. There's been, you know, prices bounded about 60 million, etc. It could be a case of if we loan him out again, his price could go up again. The World Cup, you could have a great World Cup. His price could go up again off the back of that. And then you start to ask yourself, all right, do we keep him? Is he really that good? I would like to see him in the Premier League, but I wouldn't be mad if he went on a loan to a Premier League club so that he got minutes.
I can live with that.
We could assess, you know, okay, cool. This guy needs to come in right away. He's going to be a future captain, future leader. The way he, you know, the way he represents himself, professionalism, etc. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go with a loan, just to see a little bit closer, because I don't know how his lateral movement is, meaning how he covers the ground in the channels. In the Premier League, the transitions are ultra fast, and the physicality is another level. So that's my concerns. On the ball, I don't have any, because I've seen a lot of clips of him scoring headers, bicycle kicks, free kicks, you name it. He's done it all on the ball. Off the ball is where I want to see a little bit more. I have seen a few clips. So there was a clip flying around, international clip that was Croatia. I can't remember who they played, but he was doing a lot of blocks.
Belgium, I think it was.
Belgium, that's right. So there's a lot of blocks I saw. There was a few headers, but I just haven't seen him in open spaces. How is he moving when, you know, supposing Spurs are playing and we're trying to pin that team back in? How is he going the other way when he's got large spaces to defend? I just don't know. That's a bit of an unknown quantity to me. So sorry for being a bit of a flip-flop and saying
this is why I started with Vuskovic. I was going to do the loan player separately, but I thought I'd bring him in.
Because the last thing I will say, someone's mentioned in the comments, because I actually originally thought this, and I meant to say this last week, was I don't know if De Zerbi wants to play a back three at times, and that would change the whole conversation for me. So I've seen him do it at Brighton. Everyone thinks Brighton was just a 4-2-3-1, but I've seen him play even against us, he played a back three. I remember one.
He's done it loads with Marseille as well. Played back three a lot of the time.
George,
in which case he'd get plenty of time at Tottenham. Mm-hmm. You know, do we see him as a future Tottenham player, or do we see him as just an investment that we can flog off for 80 million?
Well, he has said personally, just to be clear and let you come on this point, George, he has said that he really is excited about the prospect of working under De Zerbi, the way he's an attacking-minded coach. He did say that he's not making any decision on his future until after the World Cup. His full concentration is for Croatia. He is going to be a starter for Croatia at the World Cup. He's definitely going to start with them. But if we had to make a decision right now, George, ahead of it, where are you? What would you do?
The thing is, like, again, I'm kind of a bit torn as well, mainly because I want to see him play for us, because I think there's so much hype around him. I think when you've got every major club supposedly after him, you know, your Real Madrids, your Barcelonas, your Bayern Munichs, like that, I think that's quite telling to his talent. The problem is I wouldn't want him to stay and then almost rot in the squad as like fourth or even fifth choice, depending on how De Zerbi sees him fitting in with Danzo. Like, obviously, he's like Vuskovic is supposed to be one of the best, right? But we've not seen him in a league as intense as the Premier League. We haven't necessarily seen how his build-up play is in the way that De Zerbi specifically wants it done. So I think pre-season is going to be the most telling aspect. For me personally, like I'd love to be able to keep him at the club and see how he can handle it, because it's almost trying to get that balance right of how is he supposed to learn how to play our football and in the Prem without being here. But equally, is it a waste him being here if he's just going to sit on the bench the whole time? So really and truly, I think we'll get a better picture when we see pre-season as to whether he can sort of handle the football a bit better, and maybe understand the environment. But I do agree with the guys, like a loan to the Premier League, I think it would probably be, I think that would be the most logical next step. Because as well, there was a lot of chatter about if we were to give him another loan, we could then get him to extend his contract, and like there's a few benefits in that situation. But yeah, if we do end up signing Van Hecke and then Vuskovic is now 4th, 5th choice, it seems, I don't know, potentially a bit like a waste. But me personally, I'd love to see him play for us next year, just because I think he's got an abundance of talent.
Yep. And it does feel like, he's being spoken about very, very highly. And I think my only worry is that the longer you keep letting him go out on loan, the more disconnected he becomes with Tottenham, and he doesn't really ever feel Tottenham is his club. He goes to Hamburg for another year, and again, that kind of lessens even more so the connection. So look, it's one that definitely is going to, I think, cause a rift of opinions. I can already see that in the live broadcast. A lot of people were suggesting a number of different things about what to do with him. What we are going to do, guys, we are going to go for our first break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, we are going to come on now to the first team in terms of defenders. If you can, for us out there, guys, to like, hype and subscribe, that would be great. Please do the same for George over, of course, at his platform, George Achillia, and Ash over at Spurs Kings TV. Right, so let's start with Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro has been, as we know, in the last couple of weeks or so, linked with moves away to Real Madrid. Obviously, they have subsequently since brought in Dumfries, so we know he's not going to Real Madrid. There has been reported interest from Manchester City in Pedro Porro. Let's start, Jason, with you. He played the second most minutes, I understand, of the season amongst the squad. He contributed with 2 goals, 6 assists. I think it's fair to say that overall, defensively, I thought he had quite a mixed campaign. What are you doing, Jason? Keeping, selling?
He's got, 2 years left on his contract, hasn't he?
2 years left on his contract as things stand, and there has been talk that Tottenham would ideally like to engage him over this summer to try and get him to extend.
If the intention is to extend his contract, then I'd want to keep him. If it isn't, then he definitely is, what's the offer? I think Porro's got quality going forward that we can use, and it wouldn't be easy to get his quality going forward from any. I mean, Jed Spence doesn't have anywhere near that quality going forward, nor does your doggy, nor does Ben Davies at left back and that. So, but we know his problems defensively as well. But in an ideal world, I'd try and agree a deal with Porro and keep. But if he's not going to sign a contract, or if somebody comes along with 40, 50 million, then maybe you take it.
It's interesting because, George, coming over to you with Porro, he was a big player under De Zerbi. He was one that he highlighted that would be so crucial to him during the run-in. He does get, let's be honest, some criticism in terms of the fact of his defending at times. I think he's seen as somebody that can cross a decent ball into the box. George, what are you doing? Pedro Porro?
I am absolutely keeping him. I personally don't understand a lot of the hate that he gets, because for me, he's one of the most reliable players in the squad when it comes to availability, which is a start. Like, you need that for the get-go, and we've seen how unreliable our squad can be. I think I do understand the criticisms of the defensive side of things, but I do think that was also exaggerated because of maybe our football as well, especially under Thomas Frank, where he was basically asked to just be a right back, like just be as deep as possible, lump the ball towards Kudus. Like, that was basically his only job, right? Whereas I feel like Ange in particular, and I do think De Zerbi, since he came in, has platformed him to the best of his abilities. He's been inverting a lot more, and crossing in from the sort of, I guess, the right half space sort of areas, where I think he is absolutely key. And since he's come to the Premier League, it's only been him and Trent that have been this high when it comes to attacking contributions. I don't think you can afford to lose someone like that. I don't think there's a right back out there that you can compensate that sort of ability for. And what I really liked, actually, that I think De Zerbi did really well, which maybe it's a bit more of a manager issue why his defensive side is a bit lacking, is the way De Zerbi utilised Palinha to effectively cover him as effectively a right centre back, and that allowed Porro to go forward in his naturally best area, and he creates so many chances every season. I just personally don't see what we gain from selling him and then having to look for another right back, or you're now promoting Spence to the first team right back, which exactly what Jason said there is almost the complete opposite. Spence is like ultra brilliant defensive side of it, but going forward, not so much. Obviously, a great assist the other day, but compared to Porro, it's almost like they complement each other in a way that they do different things. So I would 1000% keep Porro.
Okay.
17 Spanish caps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get 17 Spanish caps if you're a poor player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He also posted the joint most assists for the club this season. George, you referenced it earlier that, you know, you look at all the stats in terms of world football. Porro's up there in terms of the contributions that he does provide.
I think he overtook Trent, obviously because Trent left for Real Madrid, right? But I think since then he's overtaken Trent since he's joined the Premier League.
And those stats are in a poor season, not in his best season.
Yeah.
His bang average season, and still recording those numbers.
Okay, so at the moment we've got to keep on Pedro Porro. I've always said it for me, Ash. The biggest concern for me is if you're going to be selling Pedro Porro, I said this back to the Tottenham team under Pochettino, who are you bringing in that's better than Pedro Porro? Because I think it's fair to say that since we established that Pochettino team, every player that we've signed, with all due respect, I think there's been a downgrade on every player that ended up leaving. Any doubt in your mind, Ash? Pedro Porro?
No, I disagree with the boys. The profile player is one that's hard to replace. I mean, there's other players that aren't the same level as him. There's like Gertruda, he plays at Sunderland, but used to play at Foreigners. He was singing our podium when he was there. And he's someone that can play the DM role, but can play right back. He's a right back, but can play centre back, can play DM, can play across the whole back line. He's someone that's similar to him, but not at the same level. And he's right. He's our most progressive passer in the team. So it's really hard to replace that type of ability. We need players that can progress the ball. That's the biggest issue at the Spurs at the moment. We're lacking players that can do progressive passes. And that's what you get with Porro. I do hear the concerns. Like, he does need to check his mirrors a lot more. Again, his height is a bit of an issue. But like George said earlier, you've got Jed Spence. He's got the defensive floor, which is a lot higher. But then the attacking floor for Porro is equally a lot higher. So there you go.
And we're going to come on to Jed Spence next, actually. So Spence overall, again, I'd say he's had a bit of a mixed season. Obviously, like I say, in terms of Thomas Frank, he had that incident that was highlighted early on at Chelsea where he blanked the manager. I mean, he seemed very unhappy at certain points during the campaign. I mean, look, he obviously did put his body on the line for Spurs in terms of the final day, played with a broken jaw. Again, I know Spence does divide opinions. He is going to the World Cup with England. Jace, we'll start with you. Jed Spence, any doubt in your mind he should be a Spurs player come next season under Roberto De Zerbi?
If I'm honest, I'm indifferent to him. If we got a decent offer, I'd allow him to go. I think all of what I see as our second choice players, I don't have a problem with any of them going if they're better. The constant question is about his attitude, which we've seen at times at Tottenham this year. And yet it's strange that Thomas Tuchel has taken him to the World Cup where he wants people with the right attitude. And, you know, he's left a player like Trent and all those out. So it's very hard to describe his attitude unless we're sitting around the group. But, you know, I'm indifferent to him. I'm not banging the door to keep him. I'm not saying get rid by any means. But if somebody came along with 30 million, I'd bite their hands off.
Okay. He played, coming over to you, Ash, 44 games for Spurs last season, not a goal or an assist in those 44 games. Whether that changes your opinion, I don't know. What are you doing, Ash, for you on Jed Spence? We'll get you to unmute if you can for us, Ash.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Like, in terms of recovery pace, I think he's one of our better defenders. Now that we signed Andy Robertson and people do want Paulinho, we do have a slight issue in terms of recovering the ball if we lose it, especially if we're looking to be a team that's going to be predominantly possession-based. And we're going to be susceptible to a lot of transitions, in my opinion. And a player like Jed Spence on your books, he can cover the right flank and he can cover the left flank. And so if you're going to have a player like Senesi come in and you're going to have a player like Van Hecke come in, then you've got two players that aren't quick over the grouse. So Jed Spence in the team, he helps to cover that, especially if Mickey van der Ven picks up an injury, or a Doggy. Doggy picks up a lot of injuries. He's going to be that player, in my opinion, that has that pace, that recovery pace, that 1v1 ability to win the ball back. Attitude comes down to the right type of manager. I think if he gets the right type of coach, puts his arm around him, you see a different Jed. He reminds me of a like slightly nonchalant, kind of laid back kind of character. And some people misread that for being like bad attitude. But I honestly think he's getting along well. I remember when he first came, everyone was like, oh, he looks a bit isolated. Doesn't look like he talks to the other players. But he seems like he gets along, especially when I was watching the Madison videos. And he's just, he's really chilled. He's a chill guy. He's cool, calm, collective. I know a lot of people didn't like that Rio Ferdinand interview he did.
With the shades.
With the shade of, why is he wearing the shades indoors? But I think it's a culture thing, like talking from my experience, I think it's a cultural thing. But I've got no problem with Jed Spence in terms of our squad. I say keep him.
Okay. George, to sum up, I think it looks like Jason's indifferent. So I think we're at the point of saying we're keeping Jed Spence. Third most minutes of any Spurs player last season. George, you changing the debate as to what we've got? It looks like we are keeping Jed as things stand.
No, I think keeping him. I think the couple of things I just wanted to add to that is, one, I think we're going to be changing a lot of the rest of the squad this year. And I feel like changing Spence on top of that is it's almost unnecessary to an extent, because as well, I think the second thing I wanted to say is that we obviously haven't actually really seen him at right back a lot.
That's very true.
For the season.
Great
He's had
point.
to cover left back, left wing, right wing. Like, we haven't actually seen him in his most natural position. So it'll be good to see him potentially rotate with Porro and almost take the workload off of Porro a little bit to that extent. Because I do think when Spence does play on the left, when he does go forward, we're just completely one-dimensional, because you just know that he's going to cut in on his right, and it's easy to sort of block off. So it'll be good to see him on the right side. I think there's other areas that are far more pressing, and I think if you end up just changing the whole squad because you think the whole squad needs changing, I think that could also be quite a bad thing as well. So no, I think I'd keep him. And like I said before, I think he complements Porro in the sense that you've got two different types of right backs and dynamics that you can almost choose between depending on what you want. If you want to go for a game where you want your left back to be ultra attacking, then Spence might be good to tuck in a bit more, vice versa, with Porro playing and someone else like an Udogie maybe further back.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the right backs pretty much done, bar. We'll come on to Susan. I know you can probably play either side. Rudy Munro makes a very good point here in terms of Porro. He says the best availability is availability. So why sell the most fit player over the last 2 seasons, which again is a very valid point to raise. I'm going to go next, guys, to the left backs. And look, I mean, we can sit here and debate Ben Davies, but from what we are hearing, Ben Davies is going to get a new contract. So it feels like a bit of a worthless debate. I mean, we can sit here and say to keep, to sell, to loan him, but the reality is it looks like Ben is staying at the club. So I think just to maybe free up a bit more time, because I feel like that midfield conversation we're going to have is going to be one of the more... Will it be one of the more debateful conversations? Ben Davies is going to stay, despite the fact I think he only played minutes-wise 250 minutes across the whole of last season for Tottenham. But bearing in mind, obviously, a big chunk of that, of course, was the fact he did suffer injury and wasn't available for a number of games. So just bear that in mind with Ben. But obviously, he is staying. Let's come to Destiny and Doggy.
You get the feeling Davies is staying purely for coaching roles and what's to come down the line, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't think they're really keeping him as a genuine first-team player.
Agree, Jason. Yeah, agree. It looks like he's taken that. He looks like he's staying on review to then go in, whether it's upstairs or part of the coaching staff. That feels like that is the plan for him. Destiny or Doggy? Interesting this one with Destiny. I think the problem with Destiny for me is just his fitness and availability. I think if we keep him fit, there could be a real high ceiling there. The problem is, George, is how can we keep him fit? I mean, I look at last season. So in the 38 games, he only played in 20 of them and got a single assist. We've obviously brought Andy Robertson in now to bring us some depth in that area. A Doggy, is there a conversation to be had there, George, in terms of keeping, selling, buying for you?
I think at the very moment, no. I think there potentially might be conversations down the line. I think the issue is because we've already brought in Robertson, I think it's almost taken it out of the question. Like, I don't think we bring in Robertson and then also sell Doggy and bring in another first team left back. Like and this kind of links to Robertson a little bit. Like and I'm sure we'll touch on it like in a bit, but my personal preference in terms of building a squad would be to sign players that are first teamers, and then your first teamers almost become the squad players, because I think that for me is like the quicker and more effective way to improve the team. Whereas the Robertson move at the moment just feels more of like an improvement on Ben Davis rather than an improvement on a Doggy, for example. But I think, like, just quickly on that, I loved Udogie when he came in. I think his strength in carrying is quality, but I think he does have some limitations when it comes to crossing the ball in the box, which we know Frank tried to work on him early in the season. And also, like you say, the injuries is a huge issue, because it's not like it's just been one season, right? It's pretty much been ever since we've brought him in. He's had major injuries, and not only that, I'm not really seeing him progress at the level that I thought he necessarily would, which makes me think that there's got to be uncomfortable conversations later down the line. I'm just hoping that he gets a season of being injury free, and we can maybe hopefully see him develop more. But it has to be quite a question as to whether it can last with the amount of injuries that he's tends to have every season.
But it's a keep for now, George.
It's a keep for now. It's a keep for now. I think at the moment, I'm not really too sure of many other left backs that you'd bring in that'd be like, yes, instant upgrade. Like I said before, with all the other changes we need to do. So I'd keep him for now and see how he fares on with Robertson as rotation. But it's maybe a conversation for next summer.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing, Ash, coming over to you is the fact, because we have brought Robertson in, and because of the, you'd say, lack of availability of Udogie generally, you'd feel that, there's actually a competition there up for place between Robertson and Udogie, which is crazy when you do think, you look at, obviously, Liverpool last season. I think Robertson did feature heavily for them, but I think only started 11 games. I know we're going to have the one game a week because of the fact we've got no Europe. Where do you sit in terms of Destiny Udogie for you? Could Spurs go out there and get a better, more available left back this summer if they were to consider offers for him?
I mean, yeah, of course you could. You could do that with many positions, but I don't think we've got a new gaffer, and I think he loves him. He's Italian, first of all. So they've got that in common, and I think he's already earmarked him as one of the players that he wants to keep. So for me, I just need to see a season where he's got one game a week under the new gaffer and see how he gets on. Defensively, I think he's good. He can get up and down. I'm not sure about Robertson getting up and down. I think Robertson can get up, but I don't sure how much recovery pace he has to get back. So that's my issues with Robertson defensively. Robbo, of course, when it comes to crossing the ball, as long as he can create that little bit of separation, he can whip crosses in better than any fullback at the moment, other than maybe Porro. But he needs to be I think for Robertson, he needs to be in the area already rather than bursting past a player. I'm not sure that was ever his game like that. But for Doggy, like George has said, that crossing ability is not quite there. He does like a cutback. He does arrive in that pocket a lot of the times where he's in that kind of 10 position. We're seeing a lot higher up, and they rotate a lot more. And I'm assuming we're going to see a lot more fluidity in at the Zerbi system, creating more triangles. And he gives us a lot more balance because he is left-footed. I would say Doggy, you're going to keep him for one more season and take a strong look at him. If he breaks down again, you have to sell it.
Okay, Jason, casting verdict for you. Looks like we've got to keep for now on Udogie. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think Robertson was fed up at Liverpool being the backup behind Kirkes, and as the season went on, played the higher profile games than Kirkes. So I think Robertson sees himself as coming not to be a backup option, but to be the first. And if we're paying Robertson 165 grand a week, I don't see us paying backup players that type of salary. So to me, Robertson's going to be the left back on the opening day. In which case, again, if we got an offer for Destiny, so be it. I think there's a high ceiling with Destiny, but I'm not so sure he's progressed 1 inch in the 3 years we've had him, and it's no good if he constantly breaks down. So again, a bit like Jed, I'm not putting him on a transfer list, but if an offer came in for him, I'd take somebody up on it.
Okay, so it feels like for Destiny, pretty much a defining season maybe coming up for him, with the crucial aspect, of course, of staying fit. Sousa, of course, young Brazilian kid. He only actually, I think, featured in something around 144 minutes. So I think he only got 4 appearances to his name. So it's really hard to sit here and really give a definitive verdict on Sousa. We didn't really see him for a huge amount of last season. I mean, for me, I can just say I'd be in favour of a loan for him potentially. Are we all in agreement with that, boys? A loan for Sousa?
Yeah.
Too many left backs. There's no room.
We're moving on. I say a loan for Sousa. Okay. Maybe this one would be more controversial if it came mid-season, but now obviously the way the season played out, and well, that last week of the season played out, and we're hearing heavy interest now from Romero. It was speculated in the last 24 hours from Man United's camp, but that's now being dismissed by English media. But it's been when is it not an interesting season for Christian Romero and what he does hold for Tottenham? I mean, look, me personally, I find it very hard. I think it's, for me, unforgivable what transpired in that last week of the season. You know, for him to think in any remote way it was a good idea. I know, Jason, you had a view on this about the fact that he chose to go to Argentina, whether he had permission, didn't have permission, but with the intent being there that he was maybe going to miss Spurs' final game of the Premier League season, a game which I think, I said at the time was probably one of the most important games in our modern domestic history, that he even thought about maybe not coming to it. And in the last moment decided to show up. I think I'm at a case with Romero. We said this on the show with Matt Law, that there's just so much noise around him. But the fact you've got Senesi coming through the door, moving for Van Hecke, it looks like Spurs are already kind of getting ducks in a row, getting players in early because they're preparing for Romero's exit. So I'm at a point where I'm happy to say I want Romero to leave the football club. Let's start with Jason. Jason, Romero, where are you on him for you?
There's the door. Off you go. I think the biggest thing that for me with Romero that I've always liked about him is the ability to pass it through the lines from the back. But if you're bringing in Senesi and Van Hecke, who are excellent at that, then then you've got that covered. So the amount of times he's let the club down is huge. Not just the sendings off and things like that when we were desperately short. Like, you can't come out and say the board are letting the club down and then get yourself sent off and banned for 5 games immediately the next game, can you? I mean, it just kills your argument. So I think it's just time. I think he wants to move. We're ready to move on. We can't forget man of the match in a Europa League final, but will he ever go down as a Spurs legend? Probably not. So let's just agree to go our separate ways.
Yeah, I mean, I look at last season, and I know people have gone further back than this in terms of his availability. They're saying along the lines of, I think Spurs fans, when they're looking at this in the past, he's only been around for about 40% availability of the games since he's been available, since he was signed for Tottenham. But he only played, George, come over to you, out of the 52 matches, and that was including 4 suspensions as well and a knee injury. He only featured in 32 games for Tottenham. And I think one of the biggest frustrations around Romero is his lack of availability, and also it feels consistently always putting country over club, which, to be fair, look, I think South American players, that they're very proud to play for their country, but it has felt like at every opportunity, Spurs has always been less of a priority than Argentina. Where are you on Romero now? With Senesi coming through the door, with Van Hecke coming through the door, 2 players that, Spurs are going for very specific players that have got progressive passes in their game, very highly rated. What does that mean for Romero's future, George? Have they already made their mind up?
Yeah, it seems like it. I think he's gone. And look, to be honest, I want to start off by saying that I really like Romero, and I think I've appreciate what he's done for us. But I do agree that I think a lot of the issues do stem from the fact that he's not as readily available as well as we kind of need him to be, especially as a captain, as your main centre back. I think, like you say, his attributes in terms of his passing ability, fantastic, especially as we don't have or had anyone like that in midfield. And it was basically just him and Porro just pulling their weight in that regards. And in general, I like his aggression because I think it complements Van der Ven well. But we've seen a lot this season where his mistiming of it and it puts strikers in behind, and we conceded goals for it. I think Spurs have never really been good at selling players at the right time. And I think it looks like we did that with Johnson, potentially. And I think this is just the right time for Romero to go. So, yeah, I think I'd sell him, try and get a decent bit of money for him. And then it looks like we're already planning ahead with like Senesi and Van Hecke anyway. So, yeah, I think it's just one of those situations where I'm grateful for some of the games he's done in the past and this, that, and the other. And for how long he's actually been at the club and extending. I do think he's been burnt a bit by the club, extending the new contract and then making all these promises. And obviously, we all seen the Instagram post that he's done almost in his anger of how they haven't progressed the last couple of years. So I do like him in that respect. I do think he wants Tottenham to succeed in that respect. But yeah, it's just a case of this is the right time to move him on, get the next player in and keep evolving as a club.
Just for fair balance, he did provide 10 goal involvements as central defender for Spurs last season. So Spurs, someone's going to have to fill that void. I mean, he was one of our highest goal scorers in the end last season. That tells you everything about the attackers that we've got to come on to on this show. But Ash, for you, Romero, any doubt in your mind he's going based on the way this trajectory is going for him?
Yeah, I think he wanted to go last season, didn't he? And we had to give him something substantial to let him know like things were changing and also his contract, he would receive a bit more money. So obviously things haven't worked out. And that's just the name of football. It's the nature of business. Me personally, after a while, I said, you know what? I'm not going to get too married to players because they come and go. It's the club I love. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what remains, to be honest with you. Romero, good player, great player, in my opinion. And I think he will be great somewhere else. And that's what I've got to say.
That's fine. Well, listen, with regards to Romero, then, we've all got a sell for him. Kevin Danso, probably not worth a debate because De Zerbi has already said Danso is going to be staying at the club next season. And quite interestingly, I think when you look at the stats overall, he played 36 times for Spurs and no player I understand in the squad had a higher points per game total than Kevin Danso, which again is really remarkable when you think about that. So, listen, I mean, he may not end up being Spurs' first starter next season with obviously, of course, Senesi and then Van Hecke coming in. But just have to bear in mind that it looks like De Zerbi really likes him as a squad player and he's going to be here, of course, for next season. They have been linked in the last 24 hours, Tottenham, to another centre-back, Gleeson Bremer. It's not the first time Spurs have been linked with another centre-back, but you just think at the moment, I mean, if we're bringing another centre-back, we're going to be really, really stockpiling. So I think, given what we've got at the moment, you'd imagine, yeah, Danzo's going to stay. And that just is with Mickey van der Ven, who it appears, given the fact, George, to start with you on Mickey, that he seems to be quite instrumental behind this deal for Paul Van Hecke. The fact he's spoken to him about the fact that he thinks Spurs is a good step for him. I think many of us would be quite surprised now if Van der Ven would leave because De Zerbi claimed that he was the best left-sided centre-back in the Premier League. So maybe barring a crazy offer, George, are we expecting, in your opinion, Mickey van der Ven to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's been talked about as potential captain alongside Madders. And I think as well, you've seen from his attitude really in terms of the managers we've had this last season. Mad had to say managers this last season. I think the football that we play plays a big part. And he seems to be all in on De Zerbi. And I think he was just disillusioned under Thomas Frank and was just completely lost. And no wonder he was looking elsewhere when you're thinking we could get relegated and the football is absolutely diabolical. And I truly think bringing De Zerbi in has completely changed that and his mentality around it. And I think there was a quote today where I think Van der Ven was interviewed and he was saying that De Zerbi basically demanded him to be more of a leader in that run-in. So I think he's made a U-turn on earlier this season. I think a lot of the fans have done a U-turn on him because of that as well. And I think changing both centre-backs, Romero and Van der Ven one summer could be a little bit too much. So okay. No, I think Van der Ven's, he's got such an abundance of ability in terms of what he offers as a centre-back and also the fact he can cover left-back as well. I think he's a huge asset for us that we just can't get rid of.
He ended up, Ash, coming around to you being Spurs' joint second top goal scorer of the season. Van der Ven, keeping Ash now?
I think a lot of people misprofile Van der Ven because of his pace. I don't think they realise of what style of defenders that we have at the club. I think you've got Romero, who was more the stopper, so he stops at source. And I think Van der Ven was more the sweeper. And so if you look at the two profiles like that, then you start to appreciate Van der Ven's defensive qualities a lot more in his reading of the game. Now, yes, he does use his pace to win those recovery challenges back when we need to win that ball high up. When we've lost the ball, from an attacking position, he's there to clean up. But the amount of crunching tackles I've seen him do, I said, yeah, this guy, like, he's only going to get better because he's 25 at the moment, I believe. And in terms of like years of defenders, I don't think he's at his peak yet. I think he's got a few more years before he reaches that. And aerially, I think he can improve. That's something I thought slightly did improve under Thomas Frank. If it was one thing I could say that improved with Frank, because he did score a few goals with his head. But yeah, he still does need to improve that, in my opinion, aerial ability. But yeah, I think he's a player that's going to only better. And if we do get a Van Hecke, for example, in, and they're both communicating in Dutch, both leaders, you know, Van Hecke was Brighton's player of the season. He's noted for his leadership and his ability to talk to his whole team. Imagine him rubbing off on Van der Ven. Like, I think Van der Ven could go really high. I think he could do really well. And like, I remember when we first got him, the fans were waxing lyrical about him, and it was just like a bad season from Frank. And then all of a sudden, we turn so quickly on our players. It's crazy. He was arguing with the fans inside the stadium, I remember, and that was like
Bournemouth. Yeah, Bournemouth. It was
people
difficult.
started saying,
Yes.
"Oh,
Yes.
is he really that good?" Do you know what I mean? I just think, yeah, he's come back now with a bit more fight, a bit more belief, and I think he's only going to go upwards, in my opinion.
Okay, Jason's come round to you quickly on Van der Ven, because also he played more minutes than any other Spurs outfield player in the campaign of last season. Keeping now, Van der Ven, for you? Any doubt in your mind?
I am, but I do want to see big improvements in him. You know, if you take the pace out of this game, is his 1v1 defending that great? For a man
There was
of
a few
his
moments
size,
towards the end of the season I thought he was panicking. I think you said that.
Yeah. How many times does he win the ball in the air for a man of his size? How often is it his man that's peeled off the back of him that's unmarked to tap one in? So I think there's still a hell of a lot of defensive work he has to do. I think there's no doubt for me that he'll go on to be a really top player, but it's taking that next step where he's got to show he's got a lot more to his game than just a bit of pace. I think if he's the captain next year, he needs to show a little bit more composure when it's going against us, because I thought he was, it wasn't just the Palace game. I mean, the Fulham game, I thought he was running around all over the place in that Fulham game, just in desperation. Now, maybe that desperation is the desire to do well, but you've still got to play with your brain and a little bit of composure. So, but his pace is definitely a massive asset. His ability with the ball is a massive asset. So I want to keep him. The one thing I would say, if he's a captain next season, but we're still paying him 50 grand a week or whatever it is, and he's still not signing an extension to his contract, then it doesn't tell me he really sees himself long-term at Tottenham. So again, I think I'd like to see him sign a contract and commit properly to the club, because all the time he's happy on 50 grand a week. For me, that's telling me I'm not going to get blocked in so that Tottenham price me out of a move. So that's my one doubt on Mickey. And particularly if he's captain, you've got to sign an extension, mate.
I think that's one of the first. I think someone said here, Spurs fan. That's one of the first ones you said you're keeping a player, Jay, so far.
Well, we finished 17th and 17th with most of these players.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
You know,
You're right.
Good enough to finish 17th in 2 years. Why do you want to risk finishing 18th next year?
Yeah, so that's what we've got to keep on Mickey. But I think you're right, Jason. For me, if he's going to be the captain, I want to see him commit to the club and sign a new contract. My worry with giving the captaincy is that I'm not sure how much really that heavily weighs him down. Is that actually going to affect his performance? So we'll see. A couple of quick ones, guys. I'm hoping we can quickly get through before we go to this final break of the show. Radu Dragusin, he only made 11 appearances last season. Is there much of a debate in this? Are we happy to sell Radu Dragusin? I think we've got a yes across the board. It looks like we've got a yes
choice.
Fifth choice. Radu. Yeah.
Take anything over 10 million. Just get rid of Deadwood.
Okay. I mean, there's been suggestions that Fabio Paratici, Fiorentina now, sporting director, former Spurs, looks like he may be keen on eyeing him up. And the other player, just to mention quickly, is the 17-year-old centre-back that did actually play for Spurs both in the Premier League and Champions League last season, and that's Junai Byfield. Given our fact Junai will be quite far down the pecking order when you think Senesi is going to be here, Van Hecke's going to be here as well, we'd imagine, boys, alone for Junai Byfield. We all in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think it also depends on what happens with Vuskovic, really, as well.
Yeah.
If Vuskovic loaned out, maybe you keep Byfield as your fifth choice. we've seen what injuries have done to us in the last couple of seasons. But yeah, I think it's kind of dependent on what happens with the other centre backs, really. But I think maybe a loan for more game time could be good.
Okay, because I'm looking now at all the players we've gone through defenders now wise. It looks like the only one at the moment, boys, that we're definitely committing to a sell on is Christian Romero. Looks like we're going to give, like I say, the benefit of the doubt to both Spence and, of course, to Porro for a further season. Davies obviously going to be here for another year. Phillips too. We're going to come on to the loan pad.
Stoke. He's been on loan for Stoke for 2 years.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to include him in the top 4 or 5 choices, what's the point? You might as well sell him while you've got value for him.
Yeah, but this last day, there were 17 players out on loan, so we are going to fit them into a separate category at the end. We're going to go for this next break, hopefully our final break of the show for our listeners that are on audio. Thanks to the other 15,500 that are here. We're joined by George Achillea. We're joined by Ash over here. Please make sure you go and subscribe to their respective platforms. They will be in the collaboration link after this show. And Jason's back from Thailand. Like I say, we've been delaying this show to get Jason back. And we wanted to get George and Ash on here for, like I say, this squad analysis audit that we're going through. So we are now in a position, guys, to turn our attention to the midfield. And I will keep saying this during the show, guys. Please, we implore you afterwards, please make sure you put your comments in. Let us know your thoughts on players and if you'd like to see them being kept, sold, loaned out. Let's go for one of those that could be a bit of a debate to get this one out the way. And that, of course, is João Palhinha. Because at the moment, as things stands, we haven't really heard a huge amount of news on him. There was suggestions that on the back of Spurs surviving on the final day against Everton, he made it very, very clear that he would like to stay at Spurs. He said it was a marriage that he would love to carry on. We had Roberto De Zerbi come out a few weeks before that and say he would like to keep João Palhinha. Obviously, for Tottenham, he became vital towards the end of the season. Of course, scored the goal on the final day against Everton to ensure our Premier League survival. You've got big goals in there. Of course, away at Wolves. You'd also probably now say at home to Wolves, how vital that goal was as well too. Let's start with Ash. Ash, João Palhinha, keep. Are we gonna? I'm trying to think what we're doing. Are we keeping him? Are we gonna, like I say, not go back in for him?
Renew is a good word.
Renew. Thanks, George. I'm looking for the word renew. Thank you.
You know what? I've been so flip-flop with Palhinha because, he's a player. I thought, you know what? I wouldn't mind him in the squad. But it's like, do I want a player do I want to spend like 100 and, I don't know, 20 or 50K wages on a player that's going to be a squad player? Or do I want someone that's going to be a starting player challenging for those positions? I think Palhinha is excellent off the ball, as we all know. He's really good, but I just feel like he's 31 or 30. I'm not sure how much legs he's going to have of him with seasons to come in terms of covering ground, getting across, winning those. And that's what he's best at. And I think this season, for where we were at, the situation we're in, I think he was, if not, one of our best players in terms of like box crashing, just leadership, you name it, like experience, know-how. Like he really did surprise me in terms of like getting those goals, late goals, headed goals, the Wolves game that could be so crucial in keeping us up, the bicycle kicks, shots from distance. He did it all for us. Like he was like a Superman for Spurs. So I understand the emotional connection with Spurs fans with Palhinha. But the fact that when De Zerbi came, he brought him back in, yes. But in possession, he had to play him as a right back to kind of hide his deficiencies. For me, if we're going to be a team that's going to progress the ball, especially in that first phase, because I think the biggest problem for Spurs is the midfield area, progressing the ball centrally. We avoided that like a hot potato. And when we played Chelsea, and it really, really stuck out to me when I was watching Palhinha, the way they played through us centrally, it was crazy. I was like, what happened to the Palhinha? Do you know what I mean? That's how I was. I was like, all right, cool. Maybe we need to upgrade in this area. And I was one of those guys that when we had Højbjerg, and people don't like the comparison, I was one of those guys saying, Højbjerg is too stiff on the turn. He's not composed in terms of like when the ball's in the chaos kind of area, in the central areas. Can he take that touch under pressure and turn and then play it forward? Or Can he recycle possession and then switch it? Can he dictate? Can he slow down, speed up? Can he even drive and carry with the ball? And, there's so many things that you need to do at this level. If we're looking to stay, it depends what type of club we want to be. If we were looking to stay around, 10th or 8th is calm, keep Paulinho in it. Keep Paulinho. But if we're looking to go past that, I think we can upgrade, man. I would say sell, bro. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, as in not renew. We're not going to renew. Okay, that's in Ash's opinion. We're not going to renew. He would prefer that. Okay, I'm looking generally. He actually ended up the joint second top scorer for Tottenham, which summed up really our deficiencies when it comes to up top. I feel like maybe the striker debate's going to be a very easy one on this show. Jason, Paulina, what are we doing in your opinion? Do you want to see Spurs go back in for him and give him a contract till maybe another year, or sign him permanently? Paulina, what are you doing, Jason?
I'd sign him if your ambition's to be in the bottom 6. If you want to be above the bottom 6, no thanks. No thanks. Grateful, incredibly grateful for what he gave us at the end of last season, including on the last day, and plenty of goals that he got along the way. Big goals, both the ones at Wolves, but not somebody that I want to see if we're to push even into the top half of the table. If we're to challenge even for any of the European places, not for me.
So it's an area that
chuck everything at Adam Walton.
Yeah. But the key thing is you think whatever happens, we can do better than João Paulino, in your opinion?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay. George, let's come over to you, because I say we've got quite a number of midfielders to get through here. Like we discussed, vital goals against Wolves, both home and away. People will forget the early goal against Man City. Of course, that saw Spurs beat Man City. The problem is we beat Man City away so often now that everyone just kind of assumes no matter who the manager is, we're always going to beat Man City away. But he scored a vital goal at Man City away. He also put a massive, you've got to say, performance in away at Villa Park. A massive, massive game which he performed ever so well for Tottenham. As you mentioned, he actually lost his spell, or lost a little bit of a momentum actually before De Zerbi came back in. Where are you, George, on it for Paulina, for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't renew, to be honest, because I think for me, he is perfect for, to be honest with you, the Fulham type of teams that he was at initially, because it screams instant red flags for me, where he goes from Fulham to Bayern, obviously a very high possession side, and another one of the best in the world, but he got instantly binned off, couldn't get into the team. I know there was some injuries towards the beginning, but I think exactly what Ash was alluding to there, when you're talking about players under pressure and how they can build, which is very, very key to how De Zerbi seems to build up, whether that's through passing or carrying, you've got to be able to either make the third man like runs passes, or even be able to spin the player and progress that way. I just don't think he has that capability. And yes, I agree, like what he did for us in terms of the goals, like the clutch goals, I thought was great, but there's almost that little bit of, to an extent, recency bias. I think because he was one of the better players in a really crap season, you just assume that, he was one of our better players, therefore we should keep him. I think that's kind of a poor way to think about it. I think it's, what does De Zerbi want to build, and the team he wants to build? He wants to build a high possession side, a team that can knock the ball around quickly under pressure. And Paulinho at 31 years old is not someone for me that I think is worth spending that money on. I think especially since we haven't got European football, and we've already got an abundance of midfielders, which a few are gonna stay. I personally would rather spend the money bringing in a Wharton, even a Gibbs-White, because there's a lot of chat of him playing a bit deeper to progress as well. I'd much rather us build forward in that sense than bring in an older player where we've already got experience from Robertson now. Even Senesi being 28 years old, I think I'd rather now focus on bringing in a player that brings in the quality in every aspect that someone like De Zerbi will be looking for in midfield. And I just personally don't think Paulinho has that ability. I think he's great at what he does, at those last-ditch tackles, at covering on the defensive side, but we're not trying to build a team that's not got possession, that needs to do those last-ditch tackles all the time. We need people that are secure in possession, and I just personally don't think he's the guy for that. I think there's way more other options. Paulinho.
Yeah, well, it'll probably go down as a bit of a cult hero, because obviously the fact his goals have helped kept Tottenham in the Premier League, but it does feel that, based on the conversation here, we all feel it's an area that we can definitely upgrade in, so we will wish him all the best for the future if Tottenham don't re-sign him. Just to kind of accelerate this a little bit quicker, obviously Yves Bissouma is now out of contract, so unless we hear otherwise, he is going to probably end up leaving Tottenham this summer. He only ended up playing actually in total 11 Premier League matches. He actually ended up Again, quite surprisingly, there were back-to-back starts in there with De Zerbi for the Wolves game and the Brighton game, but it does feel that De Zerbi's. I think now I'd be stunned if we saw De Zerbi want to keep Basuma. Again, another player that I think has been. I look back at Basuma, it's been really disappointing. I think he came with such high hopes, and whether it was through the coaches that we had that didn't get the best out of him, just hasn't really worked out with him whatsoever. So we're going to probably say goodbye to Basuma. Callum Olasisi, again, boys, we saying loan Callum Olasisi? What we reckon on that one? George, Ash, Jason? Looks like we're all in agreement there. We're going to say loan for Callum Olasisi. Okay.
Just no room in that starting squad with no Europe as well. So might as well.
Okay. Obviously, Conor Gallagher, he looks like he came good towards the end of the season. So I think we're all saying a keep for Conor Gallagher from what I can see across the board. There doesn't appear to be.
I was saying so as well,
Sell him to Villa, Everton. I don't mind.
Really?
Great pressing. Great at commanding, like off the ball, hard working. He's got the energy. Similar to like what you say for Pep Sarr. Hard working, energy, can cover a lot of ground. Difference is that he's got experience and he has played in the 10. I think in the 10 position, that's where we haven't really seen him shine. That's where his best work is. We've seen it at West Brom, was he at? And then Crystal Palace, of course. Chelsea, under Poch, I think a lot of people were saying, he was Poch's captain. So therefore, he's got to be good. Obviously, it hasn't worked out. For me, it hasn't worked out at Spurs. And he even alluded to it because he said there's a lot of pressure. I felt it from the fans that I wasn't playing my best football. He actually came out and admitted it. But I just think, technically, I'm not sure if he can only play in the 10, but in the build-up where the Zerbi plays two kind of pivot players, where they're a mixture between I say a 6 and an 8, but you know what I mean. They're two centre mids. I'm not sure Gallagher's good in the first phase or in the second phase, or in tight areas like that, if that makes sense. So that's how I profile him. People might profile him different. I'm like, first touch, peripheral vision, like, can he get on a turn? He's not that type of midfielder for me. He's more of a box-to-box. Crash it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, could we do better in the 10 position?
Yeah. I mean,
or a lot of, how many 10s are we going to have? Like, so...
There's a lot of comments, Ash, and you and Georgia said there in the live broadcast, there's a lot of comments saying they would sell Gallagher for the right price. And we've got to make room in this squad, actually, for bringing players in. Just, George, on that?
I agree 100% because, and I said it in my own video as well, and I know it's like, we only just got him in January, and it's one of those ones where I don't think we actually will sell him.
No.
But if I'm looking at a squad building perspective, when you're looking at that 10 list, and I agree, I think in my eyes, he can only play that 10 role because what he does he does really well, and that is the pressing and that side of the game. However, like Ash said there, I think his build-up play is, to be honest, really poor. I think that Villa game was the one where he was really, really good in terms of his pressing and that. But even in the other games under De Zerbi, when we saw Maddison come on in those games, and like the Chelsea game, for example, as well, we looked like a different team. I think that really shows you the level when you compare Maddison in that position versus Gallagher. And that's even to do with creating chances. I know Maddison missed like one quite close where he took maybe one too many touches against Chelsea, but you see the instant quality difference between Maddison and Gallagher. Now, when you think Xavi comes back in maybe December time, maybe January time, if there is a slight opportunity post World Cup or somehow during that you can get Morgan Gibbs-White as a player, you make the space for someone like Morgan Gibbs-White because he offers you, for me, way more than someone that Gallagher does. And I think it's just almost, by the time all those players come back, in my eyes, I also see long-term, I think Kudus is more of a 10 as well for De Zerbi's football. At that point, Gallagher's your 5th choice, number 10. And if that's the only position he can play and he's your 5th choice, it's a waste of a space in the squad, in my opinion. It's almost like the similar thing to Palhinha, where what they do extremely well. Like his pressing's really good and Palhinha's tackling's really good. I don't think that's enough for the type of team De Zerbi wants to build. So that's my personal take on it.
It's fascinating, Jason. Just on Gallagher for you. I mean, I can't see one in which Gallagher does leave this summer, but the boys are making very valid points that if you are looking to bring in a Gibbs-White, you're going to have to make room for that kind of player. If Tottenham do want to opt to bring in that kind of profile.
Exactly. Much like the boys, if his main role is to be a number 10, but he's not a cute passing number 10, which is what your Maddisons are, what Gibbs-White will drive into the box and get goals. Is he good enough just to be a number 10? Does he bring enough to the team as a number 10 that you sacrifice those types of players for. So for me, no, I mean, he's like George says, he's box to box. I think you're lumping in with Bergvall and perhaps Sarr, and that's the role, that's his competition in the team for me, those players, but not as a genuine number 10, nowhere near it.
Okay, this is where some might get rattled when we're asking about, very quickly, boys. I'm going to combine the two. Lucas Bergvall, only 11 Premier League games through, of course, the season. Didn't heavily, massively feature, especially under De Zerbi. Archie Gray, he started 7 Champions League matches and 18 in the league. We expect him both to be. Would we both be keeping Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, Jason?
Archie Gray is my one that I would want to keep. Archie Gray at the moment is nowhere near Adam Walton as a player, right? But when they were both in the Championship in the same year, there were far more clubs interested in Archie Gray than there was in Adam Walton. The big difference is that Palace went and signed Adam Walton to be their progressive passing number 6 and played him as their progressive passing number 6. And we went and signed Archie Gray and thought he was a right back and a centre back, rather than playing him where he should have been playing. You know, and I genuinely think if Palace had bought Archie Gray and we bought Adam Walton, then their paths would be in the same place but in opposite sides. I think there is a player in Archie Gray. I think there's composure in Archie Gray. You saw it in that Atletico game. I think played in his right position, given the right role in a stable team, you would see a better Archie Gray. My thing would be is if go to Crystal Palace and say, look, here's 50 million for Adam Walton and Archie Gray. I bet in 18 months' time, they'll feel they got the better end of that deal than we did. That's not to say he'll be a better player than Walton, but I think Gray and 50 million over Walton would see they've got the better end of the deal.
Okay. George, just bring you in, then we'll go to Ash. Gray and Bergvall, forgive me, I know I'm combining the two together in terms of keeping, selling. What would you do?
I'd keep both, also more from a technicality point of view, and I would love someone to verify this, but if either of them get loaned out, I don't know if they become club trained after this year. Whereas if they both stay, they both become club trained, which solves a big issue for Europe next year. Okay. When we do get back into it, and also as well,
3 years, I think it's got to be, George, isn't it?
3 years between the ages of 18 and 21.
3 solid at that club.
Yeah. So I think we basically would have to keep him in that respect, them in that respect. But also, I personally believe in their talents long term. And also, when you hear Harry Redknapp making quotes like Archie Gray could easily be captain within the next year or two of the club, I think you kind of take notice to those sort of things. I think with Bergvall, I personally would love to see a bit more of a consistent season, because obviously he was our player of the season the year before under Ange, under a more attacking manager. Hopefully De Zerbi can bring that out of him as well. I think this year it's been riddled with a bit of injuries, but also Thomas Frank playing him as like a right winger and a 10. And it's similar to the Gray story. It's just like we're playing so many players out of positions. It's hard to really tell where they're best at. I still have question marks whether they're both like first team ready right now. But I think even just from a technical standpoint, you basically have to keep them if you see them as the future of the club, so that they can be club trained anyway.
Okay. Ash, let's round off on these two. Bergvall, like I say, bearing in mind, he's only 20. He's played over 70 games for the club, 78 for Spurs in all comps. Gray, like we said, it's been another season of development for him. I think Gray and Bergvall will both be frustrated to have not had as many minutes as they would have liked under De Zerbi towards the end of it. Any doubts in your mind, Ash, what you're doing with both of them?
I think you can only keep one, because we've got so many ball carriers in the squad. We've got too many of a similar profile. And what we need is control, in my opinion. I think we need tempo setters, meaning players that can slow the game down or speed it up. I'm not sure Bergvall's got that element of slowing the game down and speeding it up. I think sometimes when he's on the ball, he can be chaotic, and he needs to be able to make better decisions on the ball, which would stop him making less mistakes, in my opinion. That might be to do with how he was platformed under the previous managers. I don't think he's a 10. I think he's an 8, in my opinion. And him playing further up the pitch was a mistake. He needs to scan a little bit more, and then he will make better decisions. I think Archie Gray is slightly different in the fact that he's played in more than one position. So his understanding of the game is a bit more rounder, and he sits a little bit deeper for me than maybe Bergwijn does. So it's a kind of, I hate to use these terms again, but a 6/8 for more an Archie Gray. So he shows a bit more football IQ, if that makes sense, in terms of positioning. However, the other side of Archie Gray, I think defensively, in the middle of the park, he still needs work because he can go missing in the game. And I think also he needs to command more. He needs to show a bit more bravery. To play that kind of position in the middle of the park, you need to be able to either punch through the lines, which means passing with a little bit more vim, having a bit more aggression in your passing where you put a bit more weight onto the ball. So you're in between the lines and you're able to pass into the attackers, bridge the defensive attack. And to do that, sometimes you need to show for it. Come deep, come show for the ball, create little angles, do little wall passes. George has mentioned third man runs. You need to have that and a bit of carrying as well at times to be under pressure, get on the half turn. So that's what I think Gray needs to develop on. I would keep Gray out of the two. I know Villa were interested for Bergwijn, and so were Liverpool, but I'm not sure if they would take loads for him. That's the only thing. Maybe they would want an option to buy at the end of it. So it's a difficult one for me. I would definitely loan Bergwijn, because I just think we've got so many carriers. Do you know what I mean? And I would probably keep Archie Gray around for more development around the club.
The thing I like about Bergwijn in comparison to Gray is I think Bergwijn can ride pressure a bit better when it sort of backs the goal. I think I remember it was early doors, maybe in Ange's season when he played against Liverpool. I thought he was phenomenal against them in that first game in the Carabao Cup, I think it was. And he was kind of shimmying away from players really effortlessly. So I'm intrigued to see if we see a bit more of that Bergwijn now. We've got a bit more of an attacking manager.
Definitely got a lot more physicality than Archie Gray.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think sometimes Gray...
Aggression as well.
I think Gray's calmer and in compared to Bergwijn, but I think Bergwijn's better at the more physical side of the game.
Okay, I'm going to move us on, boys, to Rodrigo Bentancur. Look, a player that got a new contract at the start of the season. That feels like a long time ago now with Bentancur. He ended up being one of the more pivotal players under De Zerbi. Come the end of it, he really seems to take a liking to him. But there were question marks, certainly, I think, before De Zerbi came through the door as to whether we would maybe consider Bentancur's future. We'll quickly go around the table on this one because we need to get to the strikers. Jason, Bentancur, any doubt in your mind for you, keeping, selling? What would you do with Bentancur?
I've always liked Bentancur, but I still worry a little bit about mobility since the injuries. For me, if I could go all out and chuck 60, 70, 80 million or whatever at Walton, then I'd sell Bentancur to help raise some of that money.
Okay, George, Bentancur.
But it's not a definite, you know what I mean? I think you can upgrade him now. What is he now, 29, 30?
Yeah.
I think you're coming to that stage. I'm not, again, he's not on the transfer list, but I'd be trying to see if I could upgrade and use him to raise some money.
Yeah. George, gut feeling for you, Bentancur?
I think keep for now. I think early in the season I would have said sell 100%, but I think that goes to show more so manager over player.
Yeah.
Because I think under Frank, he was asked to be a deep line playmaker, which he just isn't. When he's got the time on the ball and you're asking him to create from those positions, that's just, he cannot do that well. Whereas even in those few games under De Zerbi, what I think Bentancur thrives in is situations where there's a lot of automations in play. Now, what I mean by that is when you think of Bentancur under Conte's football is very specific. He has very specific tasks that the players need to do, and he did that brilliantly under Conte. De Zerbi's is similar in terms of like it's different football, but it's still very much like with the key third man runs, this, that, and the other. There's constant things, always like very specific areas players have to be in to receive the ball, specific areas where they need to pass the ball. And I think when you give Bentancur those sort of automatic like decisions, I think he's really good because, again, under pressure, he's a good player. I think we just saw a completely different style of player under Frank than we did with De Zerbi. So I think for another year, I think it could be a really useful asset for us. But again, similar to the whole Doggy situation where you almost need this season to assess, can they stay fit for the whole season? And does he truly sort of regain that form he had in the Conte era? And then maybe it's a conversation for later down the line. This season, I'd just keep and kind of redevelop the rest of the midfield.
Okay, I mean, the vibe so far in midfielders is keep unless it's Adam Walton coming in, which is the vibe at the moment. Ash, on Bentancur for you, he was pivotal, like I said, to when De Zerbi came in, of helping Spurs retain some calmness and composure in that midfield. What are we doing now for you on Bentancur?
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's the key difference. When he did come in, it was ball retention. There's a lot of players that want to rush, go now, carry the ball, drive with it. He was really good at just keeping it simple, short passes, sometimes a bit conservative, but he had the intelligence of where to position himself so that he wasn't vulnerable, or the team wasn't vulnerable in those counter-attacks, in those moments. And that's what a lot of people notice, his interceptions, his tackling, his aggression at times as well, higher up the pitch, in the midfield. And he just always seemed to be at the right place at the right time because of it. And so for me, that is a player that we don't really have, someone that can be disciplined in their role, in their position, and then recycle the ball at times. Do you know what I mean? Have the intelligence. But also, I think he's quite press resistant at times. I think that's another thing people like about him. He's quite press resistant, and he keeps the tempo at a certain level. He doesn't let it drop. So I definitely think he's a De Zerbi type player, in my opinion. And I don't think there's many of them in the squad.
Okay, Pat Matasar, let's move on to him next. He only started 13 games for Spurs last season. Forgive me now, what are we, third, fourth season of Pap? Just haven't ever really known what his position is or what really his job is. Jason, this maybe might be an easier one for us to get a resounding answer on. Pat Matasar, what we doing, Jason? We keep him, we sell him, we loan him.
You can't see him being first choice in any of the midfield roles, can you?
No.
As he improved as a player in the 3 or 4 years we've had, you know, what's his real strength? He brings energy to a side for sure, but is he a great passer? Is he a great goal scorer? Is he a great tackler? Is he a playmaker? You know, does he screen the back four? Don't see any of it. So he may well go on to be a decent player somewhere else, but again, for me, you know, if you're going to rebuild a team and rebuild, then he's one of those that leaves.
Okay, I'm just double checking with George and Ash because we want to fly through. Any disagreement there, boys? Are we in agreement with Saar to sell?
Yeah, share same sentiment. It's a bit of a sad one because I really liked when we first got him in. I thought he was developing well a bit, and then it's just again inconsistency. There's times where he's got a couple of really good games, and then he'll go missing for the next 3 or 4. And like Jason said there, I don't think we've really nailed a role for him. He's a great engine, great character, but unfortunately, when we are trying to rebuild a team from the ground up with no Europe, I think we have to make some harsh decisions. And I think this is just one of those ones where we're running out of space and we need to upgrade that midfield. And so unfortunately, I think he has to go.
And just to check, boys, obviously, because I'm coming on to Xavi Simons and James Maddison, unless I've got the mood in this room completely wrong, are we definitely for keeping both of them at the moment? Is there any debate whatsoever on both? Jason, you seem to give me a look there to say, any doubt? Looking a bit doubtful there, Jason.
No doubt. I mean, Madders can't help the ACL last year, but even then, we know he's injury prone.
Yep.
We know he's a player that you perhaps only get 20, 22, 23 league games out of. And of those 23, only 10 or 11 are really good. So, you know, he's one of the, when he's on form, really good player. And he did make a difference last season. But, you know, again, can you rely on him? Can you really rely on him? Simons is irrelevant to discuss until he comes back. So, and until he's been back for half a season. So I think we'd all like the Xavi Simons to be the player we want at Tottenham. But Madders, I think he'll stay in the summer, and I would keep him in the summer. But, you know, maybe in 12 months, he's another one that might well move on.
Yeah, Madders only just playing around 34 minutes, I believe, of Spurs' season overall, which is quite incredible, really, when he was out for such a long period. Xavi Simons, he contributed for Tottenham overall, 5 goals, 6 assists before. He obviously had an injury that ruled him out for the rest of the season. Ash, I'm going to come back round to you. So it looks like in terms of midfield-wise, I believe that is everybody. So the unanimous ones, obviously, that we know is Basuma is going to go. It looks like at the moment, João Plina is one that we're all going to wave and say goodbye to. But just to be clear, Ash, in your mind, no doubt, Xavi, James, you still see a big future with them both being at Tottenham, right?
Yeah, Captain Madders, man. Like, people love him for his leadership, his likableness, his humbleness. Yeah, people see a lot of themselves in him. Like, he's just down to earth, isn't he? That's the type of And he loves the club. You know, you can tell he loves the club. He's a Tottenham man through and through. But footballing wise, we just don't have anyone like him in terms of vision, in terms of like breaking lines, getting on the turn, making it happen. He just stands out like a sore thumb. But as Jason's already said, can you rely on him? It's physicality. He looks a bit frail. Even when he came back, I know he wasn't fully fit. But he just looked a bit, you know, if the wind blew too much, he might fly away. But that's just the way he is, and that's how he plays. Likes to drop the shoulder, and he's just a magical player. And when he scores, I remember like even on his injured seasons, like 10 goals and 9 assists. Like what? Do you know what I mean? 19 GA from our midfield. Like you can't just skim past that. That's like one of our best players. And I think that's a sad indictment, you know, that he is one of our best players. We should be looking to you know, prepare and build on or get ready to move on. One of the two. So, but yeah, Simmons, obviously he needs to get used to the league. It's a shame that he got the injury while he did, because I thought under De Zerbi he was building up rhythm. He was getting those games in, the minutes that you need to adjust to a league like us. And then I think the manager was platforming him right as well. Just off the left, letting him invert, come in, find players. Remember that ball he played into Porro and he scored a header. That was so that was brilliant. That's what, and then he did straight after. He burst two players, the little link play, got inside the box, and he just hit the post. I was like, oh, just missing the finishing. But then in that second half, top bins, and I was like, yeah, he's arrived. So yeah, it's just so unfortunate. Like, you know, this, before that, he looked like he was struggling a bit to deal with the physicality of the league. But sometimes it's about the players around you, it's not just the player himself. So Xavi Simmons for me definitely stays, man. He's a young player. He's only going to get better and look at it more.
Okay, well, we're going to accelerate to our wingers and forwards, which, guys, based on how we've gone so far, I think we've only agreed to sell about 3 or 4 players here. So, I mean, I think Jason would get rid of a lot more. I mean, back-to-back 17. I think Jason, like me, I think we see a lot more going. But it's been harder in terms of, like I say, some of the areas. But we are coming to the wingers and forwards areas now. So we're going to go for that final break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, again, thanks to the over nearly 15,500 that are with us. We've got George and Ash joining us on the show here. They're both in the collaboration link. So please, guys, do the nice thing and make sure you go and give them a subscribe if you haven't already. Right, we're going to try and speed this up now. Difficult one, this one, because obviously he's out injured at the moment with an ACL, but Wilson Odebear, overall 2 goals, 3 assists. I'm just going to start us off, guys, because we're going to need to accelerate this. I would be selling Wilson Odebear if the right opportunity came up, if we had the chance to. Obviously, he's injured, which will probably mean that we're not going to get the opportunity to do it this summer. But tell me, boys, if I'm wrong. George, you give me a bit of a look there, a glance in the air. You seem unsure.
It's more that it's just like, I think he offers something slightly different on that right side, I think, because I think personally he looked better on that right side before he got those injuries compared to the left. And I think he offers something a little bit different to what Kudus does. And it's one of those ones where I'm not like over the moon screaming he needs to be starting week in, week out, but he was finding a nice bit of form beforehand. And I think he's the type of winger that could really do well in a De Zerbi system.
Have you got room for him and Savinho, George?
Well, I see Savinho more on the left, to be honest with you. So in my eyes, I see it as like at the moment Savinho, Tell, and then it would have been Kudus and Odebear on the right side. But I'm not like screaming and shouting about Odebear. If there was like a massive offer or a good offer, then sure. But I think he is the type of person that would thrive in a De Zerbi system. But obviously, we're not going to be able to find out until later next season anyway. So.
Okay. I mean, look, I think there's a split amongst a lot of fans out there with Odebear. There's some that love his skills that he's got to offer. My concern is the end product overall. 2 goals, 3 assists over the course of the season. I mean, have we got time to keep waiting for promise? Have we got to now see delivering? Jason, you're shaking your head there. You and me, Jason, if a good offer comes in for Odebear, have you seen enough to think we're not losing an absolute generational superstar there?
Well, it's hard because another ACL, so you're not going to see him till back end and after Christmas, so you're going to be making this decision reality-wise next summer. You know, is he going to be better than Kudus? No. We're spending 65 million on Savinho on the left, so you're left with him as a backup player. What does he give you that Mikey Moore, who cost us nothing, wouldn't give you as a backup player over the next 2 or 3 years?
Good point. Okay, so you're like me, very similar to open to sell. I know George is kind of 50-50 on it. Ash casting vote, Wilson Odobert. I know, again, difficult because he's got an ACL, so he probably isn't going anywhere. But as to what we would do if the opportunity is there, Ash, what would you be doing with Odobert? Would you sell him? Would you loan him? Would you keep him?
Yeah, I shouldn't, because it's like, because you compare Odobert and Tell together, don't you? Because they came at the same time, they're similar age, they're French.
We can join both. Yeah, bring both into play if you wish. Bring them both into play.
And it's like, are you aesthetics merchant or are you an output merchant? I think that's what it comes down to as a fan, because I think a lot of people are holding on to Odobert because he's a player that can go on the outside, he can go on the inside, he can take his man on, he's physical, he's a chaos merchant. In transition, he's dangerous. We've seen him through the middle sometimes. He can be a hell of a player, but it's just like you guys were saying, the final product, the crossing is not really there for me for Odobert. That's where he lets himself down. And then sometimes when he's in the box, he just looks like that bravery lacks. When Kudus first came in the side, I think like Kudus kind of helped him, like remind him who he was. Because it was funny, at Troyes, it was Odobert, Xavi Simons, and I think, was it Savinho? I can't remember, but it was like 3 of our players was all at Troyes at one point. And they're all technical, techie players playing with each other, really good, really talented. And even at France under 21s, you've seen it with Tell and Odobert in the same squad. They look amazing on that level. But when it comes to this level, at this pressure, and you talk about mentality, I think Tell's mentality is a lot stronger. But I think Odobert on the ball, his talent in terms of beating a man 1v1 dribbling as a winger is higher. I think Tell, output-wise, in terms of scoring goals, even like crossing into the box, is higher than Odobert. So you kind of tend to lean towards more the output guy, because the output guy that can create a chance for him and score, for me, has a higher ceiling. Do you know what I mean? There's a chance that Odobert doesn't come good, even though he's got all the tricks and flicks and he can beat, he's a tricky winger, shall I say. Tell is a player that, in his career, he's got more career goals. Do you know what I mean? They're both 21. I'm looking at their career goals and their assists side by side. And Tell looks like he's the one that's got a lot more. And he's played, I wouldn't say less minutes this season, but just in general, the minutes that Tell has played, he hasn't played a lot of minutes. So out of 2 of them, you probably say Odobert has to go. Would I keep Tell? I feel we could upgrade them. I'll be honest.
I agree. I think we can as well.
Yeah, I agree. If you're saying to me, Ricky, like, 3 players, is that it? Well, 4 players we've already got rid of. We need to get rid of like a lot more.
We finished 17 back to back. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are scared because Tell, they think everyone looks at potential. I'm not one of those guys that look at potential, because for me, that's just not pie in the sky, but it's like, it's either you got it or you don't, in my opinion. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can show glimpses. Like, for example, Savinho, I can say like he's had a season where he's hit double figures. But then I'm looking at Tell, can I say he's had double figures as well? How can I say anyone in his career he's had double figures? That's what I look for. I look for proof. If I can't see proof and it's just about stealing, then it's like, you know what? I'm going to, maybe at another club. If Tottenham had our starting strikers, if we had, like, for example, Son, Kane and Bale, I'm saying keep Tell because he's got great potential. Do you know what I mean? But where we're at and the firepower is lacking and we're relying on players like Tell to help us get us out of trouble, I think that's where the issue lies, in my opinion. Yeah. So,
okay. Well, Tell overall, he contributed to Spurs 4 goals and 2 assists. Odobert feels like the jury's out. Jason, let's come to you quickly. We'll combine them both together. Tell, Odobert, what do you think in your mind?
I'd let both go. I think with Tell, you spent 40 million on him and you're now having to spend 60 million to upgrade him 2 years later. Has he improved? I think in the 2 years total, 7 goals, 4 assists.
Yep.
So, and, we had the period earlier in the year where we all said Tell deserves his chance. But if you're just about to spend 60 million, 65, 70 million on a left winger, where's he getting that chance? And like I said, so if you're stuck with a player, you think, well, he might be good in 2 years, we'll give him a chance to develop. Like I say, you might as well give Mikey Moore that role and see what he does, at least until the January window, and then think about it then. So, and if you want to raise money to buy top players, then clear some of them out. But my worry with Tell is, has he got a football brain? Has he got any composure on him? And sadly, I don't think it's there. So, like I say, we're spending 60 million to upgrade a 40 million player. That says everything.
Point. Yeah, it's a great point. Okay, listen, George, I didn't get your verdict on Tell very quickly there. George, Tell.
I personally would keep him. To be honest, it's no secret that I said when we first got him that I liked him. If I'm being completely honest, I think he's been grossly misused since we got him in. It was only really towards the end where he had to play all the time that we actually used him, in my eyes, in his best position on that left side. I do not think he's a striker.
Can I just add why I don't know if he's frozen.
Never played under Frank.
I just think that off the striker is his position. Like a second striker or a shadow striker, because he hasn't quite got the physicality to be a striker, to hold up the play, because as a centre forward, you need to hold up the play. But you need to link play as well. I think he can link play, showed little elements throughout the season. And like, if he was at Bournemouth, I could see him doing the Krupi role. Krupi plays just off Evan Nilsson. I see him in that position. Out wide, he's too far away from goal. He's going to have to go. He's not like a 1v1 demon. He can beat his man, but he's not. If he gets doubled up on, that's where his weakness happens, because he hasn't got a variety of tricks, or hasn't got like a high level skill bag to beat his man, to do like little V cuts or body feints, steppies or whatever. He hasn't got like a whole list, so he can be a bit predictable that he wants to cut onto his stronger foot and shoot. But the point I was trying to make is, I do agree with George in terms of being misprofiled. I think he's more an inside forward than
he's similar to Sonny in that respect, in terms of position, not quality, before anyone says anything like that. But in terms of his position, it's very similar to what Sonny was like.
Okay.
Sonny only got 5 goals and assists in his first season. He looked terrible. Yeah. And I think, in my personal opinion, I think like the attributes that I like of him, just super quick, is like I think in terms of young players, I think he's one of the maturest I've ever seen across the game, in my opinion, for the way he was like in his first few games talking to the fans at Fulham away, and like being knocked off the team and this and the other, coming back. I think that's good. I think, like you say, when he's involved as like a second striker in those sort of areas, I think he's fine. I think his deficiencies are definitely in decision making. There were so many times he could have released the ball to a doggy underlapping run or a Richie making a run forward, and he didn't. And I think sometimes he does run into the opposition players. I think that is where he definitely would need to improve for him to become anywhere near like first team ready players. But I do honestly believe that his shooting ability can be very good. I think we just need to probably platform him better and just let him develop more. But it's just whether we have the time to do that, really.
And is he going to get that if you're spending 60 odd million on Savinho?
That's also true.
So you're saying what? You might play 10 games next year. So you're ever going to get that development out of them?
Yeah, very good point. Okay, I'm very conscious of time, guys. We've got to get to the forwards, which might be a bit of an easier discussion in terms of the strikers, that is. Luke Williams-Barnett, I think probably you would all say maybe a loan might be good for Luke Williams-Barnett, or to stay in the academy. Dane Scarlett, Dane has been on so many loans, hasn't he? I mean, maybe it's an opportunity to maybe cash in and get some money for him. Okay. Right, so that takes us to, obviously, Mo Kudus, obviously out, and we hope to be back for obviously the start of the season. He actually racked up 3 goals, 6 assists overall. He was still ended up as a joint most assists in our squad alongside Porro and Xavi, which is quite remarkable, really, given the fact that he missed, half a season in the end, Kudus, which tells you anything about really Spurs' deficiencies when it comes to, their goal involvements overall in terms of how they did manage to rack them up. Okay, Richarlison, Solanke, let's combine them both together because, again, of time-wise, Richarlison ended Tottenham's season with 12 goals and 5 assists. I think in total, 43 matches Richarlison had. Solanke, 6 goals, no assists in combination of the Champions League and the Premier League games that he featured in. Now, bearing in mind, obviously, Solanke missed a number of games through injury. Richarlison, yes, he was obviously up there in terms of goal involvements. I'm going to say with both of them, guys, I don't know if you agree, just to kind of get us accelerated on this subject here, that if opportunities came in to sell both of them, I'd be keen to sell both Solanke and Richarlison. The key thing will be, for me, is who's coming in their place. Jason, where are you on both of those?
Yeah, I think Richie's going into his last year anyway, isn't he? So if there's no desire to extend his contract, which there probably wouldn't be, then you're pretty much having to cash in now on him. Solanke, it's interesting. De Zerbi, as soon as he came in, seemed to want Solanke in the team more than Richie. I think if we can get Solanke fit, then I think he's probably. Who are you going to get with a better output than Solanke if he's fit? But I want to see him play as our number 9. So I'd keep Solanke, but he needs to be fit, and we need to get a regular output from him. But again, if somebody said to you I just don't see someone coming along giving you 40, 50 million now for Solanke.
No. So Richarlison, Jason, you're selling, yeah? You'd be keen to sell Richarlison. Okay. Yeah. Jules, the 2 strikers for you, Richarlison, Solanke, where are you?
Pretty much same sentiment. I think, like, yes, we can definitely upgrade both, but in the general sense that we can. But when you actually look at the striker market, it is so diabolically bad at the moment.
Yeah.
So, and definitely out of the 2, I think right now, sell Richie. He's been at the club longer. Never really broke anywhere near the sort of like 20-goal season striker we potentially thought he could have been at the start. And again, just broken down with injuries every season. So it's just one of those ones where I think it's just needs to move on, get someone else in. I think Solanke has some attributes that I think could service De Zerbi really well. I think his hold-up play is way better than Richie's in terms of like linking up as the striker number 9. The thing I don't really rate about Solanke, which I was gutted by because I thought he had it the season at Bournemouth when we signed him. He doesn't seem to have as much of that hunger to get the goals that some other strikers do. Like he's good at the pressing side of things. He's good at the sort of link-up play because obviously he's quite strong with his back to goal. But you never really then see him like bust a gut, get into the box and demand to finish things. Whereas the thing you can say for Richie is more often than not, he does end up in the right place at the right time. I just don't think he has the high quality. So I think I definitely would keep Solanke for 1 more year. But the view has to be to bring in another striker that could be a first-team striker.
Okay, and De Zerbi apparently does want another striker in the squad. That obviously could be dependent on whether we do end up selling both or either Richarlison and Solanke. You can't end up going into the start of the season with just one striker, so there has to be more than one. Ash, where are you quickly on Richarlison and Solanke for you?
Yeah, Richarlison is more of a box striker, in my opinion. It's the reason why he gets so many goals. He's got that tenacity. He operates in that area. And I think the reason why he does that is because he's lost a bit of athleticism, in my opinion. He's lost a bit of power. So his acceleration, his bursts are a lot shorter. He hasn't got as much sprint endurance. So that's the reason why he kind of is more in the box, in my opinion. And I just think, as a footballer, his hold-up play is just not there. His link play as well, it's not there either compared to Solanke. And I think that De Zerbi likes intelligent forwards, if you look at João Pedro, very similar in terms of link play. The problem is with Solanke, when he does the link play or he does the hold up, he's not able to get into the box. And I remember under Gary O'Neill at Bournemouth, he only got like something like 5 goals and 3 assists, something like that, or 7 goals under Gary O'Neill. And it was because of that. He was doing a lot of the link play, a lot of hold up. Areola came in, he said, I don't want you holding up the play. I want you in the box. As soon as he was in the box, he said, look, I'm going to have Savinho creating chaos. Tavernier is going to be creating chaos. At the time, it was Altera. He plays at Brentford. He was causing chaos, whipping crosses into the box. He said, I just need you in between the sticks. And that's when we saw the best season of Solanke. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll see that under De Zerbi because of the style of play that he wants his centre forwards to do. A bit like what Ange did with him as well.
I think it's also the pace side of things. I know some comments were alluding to it, but it's not just simply that we need pace. I think it's because of that specific style of the number 9s under De Zerbi. They drop in to drag defenders away. They link up play, and then they have to spin the defenders and want to crash and like get in the box as quick as possible to get on the end of any sort of passes or crosses or certain 1-2s. And I just don't think Solanke has that about him. I think he's got the initial bit right. He can hold defenders off. He can bring another player in. Does he then have the ability to get away from that defender and get into the box quickly? I don't think so. I think those sort of players that do that are more like your Marmouches. I know people might clown it, but like a Nicholas Jackson does that sort of hold-up play. Samu Omoroidin, I'm not sure how you pronounce his surname, the one at Porto before his injury. That style, like that's how they play. I just don't think Solanke has that about him.
Yep. I agree. Look, we've done the first team, guys. We've discussed Luka Vuskovic. I think we all seem to be keen on giving Mikey Moore an opportunity, right? We'd like to see Mikey Moore next season. So I think we can give that a green light. We'd like to see what Mikey does in pre-season. Alejo Veliz, he's closing in on a move to Bahia at the end of this season. Spurs have already agreed a deal in principle with the Brazilian side. Will Lancashire, he's going to come back to the squad. Will Lancashire, Jason, quickly, Will Lancashire, what do you want to see Will Lancashire?
I think you have to make a big decision on him because, you know, he's ended up with the Championship, scored goals, a lot of goals for a club that struggled. What's your plan for him? Do you see him as a Spurs player? In which case, I'd be open to bring him back, give him the 20 minutes as a sub and something like that to get a feel for it. But if you loan him out again, you're going to loan him where? To a Championship where he's already done it. So what are you learning from it? All you're then doing really is keeping a market value because you'll still win 12 months' time saying, yeah, but he's only done it in the Championship. So again, it's time to see, are you good enough? I mean, I don't want Lancashire to become Dane Scarlett, where it's promise and promise and promise, but it's never given a chance. And eventually you just end up with his contract running out. So for me, I want to see Lancashire around the squad, getting minutes, or I'd take the chance and say, right, let's sell him at an optimal value now.
Okay. Jamie Donnelly and Ashley Phillips. What were you thinking about them? Let's go to Ash. Ash, Jamie Donnelly, Ashley Phillips. Do you want to see these guys in pre-season? Have you already got a verdict in mind in terms of what you do with those two players?
Donnelly, I would like to see in pre-season because I thought he was not bad last season in pre-season. But Phillips, I'm happy to. That's the amount of centre backs we've got. I'm happy to take a gamble and you know get some money whilst the stock is hot because he's appreciated down there in the Championship. Was it for Stoke? Is it? But
yes,
and captain.
And captain as well.
A lone player becomes a captain. I mean, that says everything about him, but he's never going to be in our first 4 or 5, is he?
No.
Yeah, that's my point. So I would sell where the stake was high because that's what we're not good at doing. So I would sell Phillips and look at Donnelly.
I suppose the other, I'm looking at some of the other players here, George. You've got Yan Min Hook, George Abbott, Yusuf Akamrich, Tyrese Hall, Damiola Ajay, Alfie Dorrington. Any of those scream out to say we need to be desperately keeping these players? Are they loans for you?
Yeah, I'd say mostly loans. The Yang Min-hyuk one, I don't really know what that sort of move was about, and especially I think we really modelled up his loans last year.
That's also we haven't got Kota Takai.
Yeah. Too many centre backs. He would have to go on loan as well, and especially with that weird foot injury he had when he first joined. The one I'd be interested in is Tyrese Hall because he comes out of the academy as really, really highly rated for youngster, and strikes me as the type of midfielder that could do well for someone like De Zerbi, but maybe it is still too early. Maybe it is another loan situation, but he would be one I'd be actually really interested to see in pre-season, whether he can sort of hold his own, because I think he was loved on loan to, was it Notts County? Where's the end of it? I can't remember where he went.
Yeah.
You're right.
I think he did really well there. So I'll just be intrigued to see what he's like in pre-season, but with the others, I'm like loans. I'm not really that fussed by.
Well, looks like Divine will go, doesn't it? Looks like Divine.
Looks like with such a low buy clause as well. Like, was it less than 5 mil?
Yes. So I mean, we've done well, guys.
The one thing, Rick, is I look back at that youth side we had 2-3 seasons ago that won Youth Premier League, won Youth Cups. I think it won 3 or 4 trophies, didn't it? That youth side, and to think that players that played really well in that side, Dorrington's, Jamie Donnelly's, Lancashire himself, there are a number of, to think that we won't get one player from that group through.
That's a real shame.
It's criminal that you can't
it's a shame.
get that group through.
Massive.
The problem is over the last couple of years of Europe, you could have given them chances. But with next year, with no Europe, that's going to be awful to see. And they won't all make it, for sure. They won't all make it. But it would be sad if players look real talents at that level, we just don't develop and they drift away.
Yeah. It looks like we've committed, though, I've been counting, we've committed to about 7 there that we definitely are going to sell. So we might have a little bit of room to play with, but arguably, just to close, boys, on this.
7 or 8, to be fair.
Yeah, I think we've done quite well under the circumstances, really. Just to round off, boys, is there anyone you're thinking we might see go this summer that you would say would be a surprise, George? Is there anything you could see happening that you think, wow, never saw that coming based on doing this audit for you?
Not really. I'd say maybe an Udogie potentially, but again, that's just like hugely dependent on who you bring in to replace him. The other of the ones that we said to keep to, I can't really see many of those or any of those going. To be fair, half of them are injured, so we can't sell them anyway. So, but no, if I had to pick a player that I think would be a surprise one, I think Udogie would be the closest. But other than that, I don't really see there being too many surprises, to be honest with you.
And it's quite sad because, I mean, I've not even mentioned his name, and that's how much of a forgotten man he's been. And it's a real shame I've said that. I've not even mentioned Kulusevski. We don't know
what is happening with him.
We don't know, obviously, in what state he's going to come back in. I mean, there has been, obviously, rules about him doing a bit of basketball in the last week or so, but it didn't seem that he was putting a lot of pressure on the knee. So, gut feeling, Ash, what do you think about Kulusevski? Do you think we will see him again in a Tottenham shirt? Sorry to throw that hospital ball to you.
No, you know what? Like, I'm just trying to listen to what the Swedish
medical
team was saying.
Yeah.
And they weren't ruling it out. They were just saying no World Cup. That's what they were saying. No World Cup. He thought he could get World Cup, but obviously, like, he's got high hopes. But it just shows his character, his mentality. A lot of people have written him off, saying they will never see him. He will never play football ever again. He's finished. And even people were mocking, oh, look at the way he's playing basketball. Look, the way he looks stiff. Yeah, of course he's going to look stiff after surgery. You're not going to be moving smoothly. Of course not. But like a good 10 weeks, let's see, innit? That's what I'm saying. Let's see. Because I don't think it's over. I don't know if he'll be the same. But again, the way he plays, he doesn't play like mad pace, and he uses his body well as well. He's the kind of guy that feints and creates his own space. He's quite intelligent in terms of how he kind of moves the ball about and how he drives the ball. And so, yeah, I'm just saying I wait and see, man, for Cooley. I know some people say like, he'll never come back. He'll never be the same. But look, I've seen Ronaldo R9. He had a similar mad injury to his knee, and he came back. So who knows, bro? Who knows?
Everyone thought Van Dijk was done after that Pickford challenge.
Very important point. Yeah, Jace, closing verdict with you. I left Kulusevski really out because we don't know what even state he's going to be in, really.
We don't know what he's going to be, do we, Decky? My worry would be, particularly with the type of injury he's got, that will he ever quite be able to obey the intensity that you need? Will he ever be able to train with the intensity that you need? And he might need a warmer weather league where that joint isn't stiffening up between games as much. You could see it maybe in a Saudi, maybe in an MLS league. I could get it, but we don't know until he comes back. But there's got to be huge doubts about him because, you know, if he comes back and you've got your Jabbies and you've got your Madisons and you've got Kudus and that, then what role is he going to have as well? So tough. It would be sad if we don't get the Decky we know come back, but I fear it will be hard for him.
Yeah,
I also think what we can't do as well is what bloody Johan Langer did in January and say, oh yeah, but we've got injuries coming back. We've got Decky coming back. I think we have to go into the season assuming we're not going to see Kulusevski and build the squad that way. And then if we do, then that's a huge bonus because then we'll have another quality player to have. But we definitely cannot go into this season just relying on the fact that, oh yeah, Kulusevski will be fine in 2-3 months' time. Like we can't be doing that.
Xavi likewise.
So I say Xavi the same.
Xavi, Odegaard. That's why I think wingers are so important. Like, I know Savinho is supposedly done, but I think we need another one, if I'm being honest with you, because
they've been linked with, again, I don't know too much about this guy, Bahoya. They've been linked with in the last 24 hours. Again, I don't know much about his particular profile, but apparently
we'll have the France under-21s front line. It's him telling Odegaard the front three.
Yeah. Well, I know the one that I think, in terms of, we haven't really, I mean, listen, we've touched on the fact people would love to see Gibbs-White. The other one name that has been mentioned in the last 24 hours, and I think again it's because there's a Spurs connection there with the fact the kid is a Tottenham fan, is Alex Scott. There are suggestions that Bournemouth do want to offer him a new contract with a release clause in there to wade off interest from Tottenham. Listen, I think the fact that he feels like he's a Spurs player, Georgie's made it very, very publicly that he wants to play for Tottenham. That feels like, again, a sign that could really maybe get fans on board. Would he be in the first team for you, George, if they were to get someone like Alex Scott through the door?
I think he easily could be as one of those midfielders. I think he's I know a lot of people talk about being another ball carrier and this, that, and the other, but that doesn't necessarily mean he can't pass. I think that's just to do with maybe their setup and the chaotic nature of Irregular football. I think he has the qualities. I think as well, when you think of the Zerbi ball, it's not just about being able to pass well. You need to be able to evade pressure. And if he can do that and get away from a player, roll a player and carry the ball forward, it's all about just progressing the ball up the pitch. And I think that's more important. It's not like he's just collecting it with no one around him and driving forward. He's really good at moving away from the opposition and getting the ball into a more dangerous position, which is why I think he could be a really good player for us. But with his whole situation with new contract, and I think in my eyes, again, this is why it's always so dependent on what other players you want. If we're not going for a Palhinha, I do think we then need to go for a really big, like sort of 6 player, where it's like, in my eyes, the dream signing would be a Bruno Guimaraes, right? Because he ticks every box. Yeah. He's a progressor. He's also strong. So you're getting the Palhinha and someone else. And if we're talking 80 million for Alex Scott, as much as I'd really love to see him at Spurs, I think you're much better off using those funds and going big, make a move for Bruno, test the waters for someone like him. And then you can always trigger the release clause next season, especially if maybe a Bergvall doesn't develop the way you want, or a Gray doesn't, or so on and so forth. I think there's other midfielders we could go for ahead of him, but absolutely, I would love to see Alex Scott in a Spurs shirt at some point.
Love that.
8 or 10, George?
More of an 8, to be honest. I don't think he's got necessarily the creative abilities that like a Maddison does, or a Xavi does, or even a Gibbs-White to that extent. I think you'd pair. Hey, to be fair, a Bruno Guimaraes and Alex Scott pairing, I think would work very well. But obviously, that's not going to happen in one window. But I think you would sort of have those two in those centre mid roles. I think he can help you progress up the pitch either way, whether that's short passing or carrying the ball.
Well, even though I know it's been hard being brutal, the one thing that's shown us is we've ruled out 7 or 8 that need to go. I mean, I know many were laughing throughout the show that if Jason had his way, there'd be about a couple of players left and De Zerbi's left leg, but there needs to be.
You hadn't even got to Manor Solomon.
But it's even, I think Manuel's one of those, again, I'd be amazed if he's going to be here. I'd be amazed if Manuel will be here towards the start of the season. Just, again, we're stockpiling so many wingers, and the links to wingers have just been incredible. So we'll see. But as things stand at the time of this show, we understand that talks are ongoing for Paul van Hecke. Spurs have apparently lodged a 3rd bid. We'll have to wait and see if that's going to be accepted. And there's ongoing talks for Savinho. But we wanted to crown this show in here before the window does start, because we always do a squad analysis. Somehow we've just about made it work just over 2 hours. So we are going to leave you with the fact that is kind of our verdict. I want to say a massive thank you to Ash. Ash, thank you so much, mate. I think a lot of fans love seeing you on these kind of shows when it comes to profiling of players and analysis of players. That's what they can expect over from you at Spurs Kings TV, right? I know you've been watching a lot of players, and we're hoping for a very busy summer in store, Ash, with hopefully a lot of spontaneous shows where I'm driving you mad saying to you, what do you think of this player we're about to sign, Ash? Right?
Yeah, bro. Thanks for having me on once again. And
Pleasure.
yeah, man, it's been fun. It's not been easy because obviously it's quite topical, and people are attached to some of our players, right? So
absolutely.
But yeah, man. Listen, this was the name of the game, and thanks for having me on. Big up to the chat, and I look forward to hearing all the comments and reading them as well.
Pleasure as always. Ash, thank you so much. You're a star. George, thank you so much. You've had a busy last week or so, George. Just give everybody an insight very quickly where you've been, so everybody can check it out, because I think it's been fascinating what you've been up to the last couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. First of all, thanks for having me back on. I love talking these sort of things, transfer, squad planning. That's kind of what I waste a lot of my time doing in my spare time. But yeah, I've spent the last 2 weeks in Austria finishing off a massive Red Bull project. It was the huge one that just dropped with Klopp, Neymar, Endrick, Richard Rios. Oh, and that's a player, by the way. It's not going to happen. I've just fallen in love with Endrick after seeing hours and hours of rushes of him dribbling with a ball and shooting. He's an absolute joke. But yeah, it's a huge project. It's now just touched 5 million views on the Red Bull YouTube channel, which I lead edited on. And yeah, it's been a project for the last 9 months now. So I'm very proud of it. So if anyone wants to go check it out, Red Bull YouTube channel, the latest football video.
Love that. George, you've been a star. Thank you so much.
Jace, thank you very much, man.
My pleasure, mate. And Jace, welcome back. We know we had to get this show in there. We were trying to get this one planned because I know you're not a mad fan of the transfer window, but doing a squad analysis, we always used to joke years ago, and I think we said at the time when we were doing this years ago, saying there's a lot of players we wanted to get rid of then. I think we're even shorter now. We need to get rid of
I think I said 17, didn't I?
Yeah. I mean, although the Derby's agreed with you, he would like to see a lot of players go. So it feels like it's going to be a very busy summer. But like I said at the start of the show, when you bear in mind this time last year, that we hadn't even appointed Frank at this point. So to have a head start on at least 2 transfers and then maybe a third and a fourth, we'd love to see obviously those players get over the line ahead of the World Cup. So we're going to leave you on that note and see what Spurs do, certainly in these next couple of days ahead of the World Cup. And my thanks to George, my thanks to Ash, my thanks to Jason, my thanks to always the viewers and listeners that make this show what it is. Please make sure, like I say, you get in the comments and you let us know your verdict on the defenders, the attackers, the midfielders, the goalkeepers. What do you want to see Spurs do? What needs to happen? From Jason, from Ash, from George, myself, we've been the Last Word on Spurs. Thank you always for your support. And as always, come on you Spurs.